And welcome to a brand new life, to a brand new day, all the way from the wastelands of California. My name is Michael, and I am a mere figment of your imagination. I look forward to once again serve you those sounds from the underground. First time listeners turn on, tune in, and drop out. This is a very different kind of show, a place where we don't feel so alone. Let us chase away the light no matter what you at home choose to believe. I do admire you for your curiosity. Live and direct. And streaming to you live on YouTube and heard around the world. Hello to you from the future. Joining me tonight, we do have a full house yet again. First up is Michael Horn. Michael is the American media representative for the Billy Meier UFO contacts. Michael Horn is a veteran here. It is certainly not his first rodeo, boys and girls. And then, of course, after the break, he's appeared here before, and we welcome him back into the circle, Mr. Robert Bruce. He has some new content for us, boys and girls. Robert Bruce has pioneered spirituality and mysticism for over 40 years. Author of best-selling books, Astrodynamics, New Energy Ways, and Practical Psychic Self-Defense. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me into your hearts and into your minds. Here we are again, on a night like this. Did you miss the show yet? I don't blame you for feeling that way. It's always an honor and my absolute pleasure to be here with you all tonight. I appreciate you all listening. Now, without further ado, let's get down to brass tacks and bring in Mr. Michael Horn. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, Mike. Ooh, there I am.
There you are, yeah.
And you be how well? I imagine you're fine. I see you posting on Twitter quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm out there. And to be honest with you, before the program, I had a very, very awful headache.
Ah.
It was killing me.
And at this time, it has departed.
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better now, finally.
Okay.
It's gone away. Yeah, I'm good. But how are you, my friend? This is about you, not me.
Well, maybe it's about all of us, as we might find out, right? I'm fine. Busy. I stay very busy. I'm happy to be busy and working on this material. So I'm not always happy with what the material delivers and what it's about, but I'm happy to be able to try to do my part in bringing it forward. Pardon me, I'm a little hoarse tonight.
That's okay. Don't worry. And Michael, you are a veteran here of the program. I was just telling the audience that this is definitely not your first rodeo here.
No, it isn't. I don't know the number, but we've done this before.
Yeah, a couple times, it's safe to say. Mm-hmm. And I think the last time you were on here was probably over a year ago, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I can actually. I can.
Time has gone by.
I knew it had been a while. Yeah.
It's gone by so fast this year. Pretty ridiculous.
True.
Yes. Yeah. So, Michael, before we get down to business here, I thought we could do the old song and dance. Definitely tell us a little bit about yourself as we get the ball rolling here.
Sure. I'm trying to think what's pertinent to the whole thing. In terms of my work with the Billy Meier material, I first discovered it in 1979, pardon me, in a bookstore in LA called the Bodhi Tree, which closed at its existing at that time location. And I think it may have reopened. I'm not in LA at this time, so I don't know what's happening with that. But that actually began 40 years worth of research, investigation, 20 trips to Switzerland, multiple interviews and time spent with Meier, other witnesses, and just a very immersive time. Now, it wasn't every minute in 40 years. I was doing a number of other things off and on, but it was always a growing focus with more and more time spent and dedicated to studying this material and to try to figure out what it meant for us. Was it authentic? Was it going to make a difference in the world? And if so, how? And a lot of questions like that. So that has been one of my main, foci, if you will, for 40 years, and during which time I've done a lot of other things as well.
Right.
But I consider this the most important thing that I could be doing. So, yeah.
I hear you. And Michael, how on earth did you first get this sort of interest, this deep desire for you to investigate even further? You've been at this for over 20 years now, my friend.
Well, 40 years.
40 years,
And
yeah. Wow.
yeah. Yeah. Well, as I say, seeing that first photo book of Billy Meier's is what hooked me in terms of attention and interest. And everything from there followed.
Just like that.
Yeah. Circumstances, because I met people who were involved with that material even more than I at the time. In 1986, I met a guy named Randy Winters, who at that time has been representing this material to the public, making audio tapes. He and I co-produced a film called The Pleiadian Connection in 1987, I think 88, somewhere right in there. And then I had been his opening act, actually. I was doing New Age comedy and songs and stuff at his events, his live presentations, and I would sit in the audience then and listen. And it was while I was doing that part of it, I was noticing that some of the information that he was putting out was not in accord with my understanding or memory recollections of what I had read in the initial 1,800 pages of transcripts that both he and I had been privy to at different times. So I, at that time, right around 1987, 88, decided I wanted to make some presentations, and Randy was extremely gracious. He provided me with, at that time, a whole slide deck full of Meier's UFO photos. And I went about starting to do my presentations in the mainland in LA and then in Hawaii, and things started to spread. And then it wasn't until 2004 that I got to officially represent the material, because I asked to do it. And I became the authorized American media representative for the Billy Meier contacts. And indeed, I am authorized to present it in South America and in other English-speaking countries in the world, which I've done.
Yes, and of course, when was the last time you talked to one Billy Meier?
Let's see, I think it was May 30th. We were there right around then. I saw him several times during our last trip to the center in May, and we returned about on June 1st or so. And I spent time intermittently discussing various things with him that were brief. And then I spent about an hour and a half with him before we left, the day before we left or so, going, just having a more in-depth conversation.
Understood. And of course, now, Michael, you are no stranger to controversy, myself included. Yeah. You've taken a lot of heat over the years, my friend, with some of the way you've approached the Billy Meier case. Some people have described it as aggressive, like you have this a very aggressive approach. Yes.
Right. Well, let me address that just a little bit.
Go ahead.
I like to think that I'm vigorous in my intention and my presentation, but I'm also vigorous in my defense of the kinds of attacks that have come from people in and out of the UFO community, not a one of whom have I been able to determine knows anything about the topic. And I say this to put it in light because, I like to say I'm persona au gratin in the UFO community. They don't want me at most of the presentations and things. The exception was this last event, Contact in the Desert.
I was surprised. You were there.
I was too, and I'm going to tell you why I was surprised.
Do.
I think I can tell. I've not publicly told this little vignette.
Yes, please do.
Okay, and I'll come back to why I, stand so strongly against attacks. And then people, it's so funny. It's like, I'll come back to that, but it's like, the kid that goes and hits a kid and runs behind his mother's back, and then the kid that's hit comes, racing towards him, and the kid cries, he's going to hurt me. It's like, I don't go after people gratuitously. I've gone after people that I think are doing great damage to the truth, who are attacking the case. And Meier, the man, they've never met him. They know nothing about him. They believe goofy stuff. So that type of thing is something I've dealt with now for many, many years. A few months ago, because I'm on the mailing list somehow for Contact in the Desert, I got a solicitation to buy tickets to be at the event. It was just a few weeks from the event. And so I responded, and I just decided to have fun with it. And I said, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm not available to speak at your event. I wasn't being invited, you have to understand.
You're right.
So I just decided to be a little, cheeky. And okay, fast forward a few weeks, and we're driving across the desert, coming back from LA, coming up to here in Arizona, and the phone in the car rings, and it's Victoria, who's the promoter, I guess, owner of Contact in the Desert. The night before, I had done my 20th appearance on George Norrie Coast to Coast. And she said, is this Michael Horn? I said, yes. She says, well, I'm Victoria. I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to lay into me like crazy for my, snotty little email.
Right.
And she said, I heard you on Coast to Coast last night. I'm a big fan of Billy Meier. Would you be willing to come? I know it's late and we really closed out the program, but I'd like to bring you to speak on the Meier. I said, well, okay. And I didn't, of course, bring up my cheeky comment because I also believe she probably didn't, read it herself. It just was an email coming in, and they, somebody could have cared less and deleted it. But it was very fortuitous and timely because I got a chance to present there and to do in public what I'm accused of doing, online a lot, which is to name the names of people that I think have done enormous damage to the truth, who are, in my opinion, and believe me, I will say this to their faces, I was hoping at the event that some would show up and be indignant about the fact that I was there, but I couldn't even find them.
Wow.
But I called them out by name, and I said, they're liars, they're charlatans, they're phonies. Now, let me give a little background on why I would say such harsh things. Look, as I've said in my presentations, the confirmed existence of extraterrestrial life would be the single most important, let's use the word development, story, event, whatever you want, in all of science and human history, exceeded only by contact with such a race. That's a phenomenal thing. Now, in the so-called paranormal community, we would believe that everybody and their brother is either being abducted or meeting or summoning aliens and all this stuff. Science, with the exception of something that recently happened, does not recognize that as being so. Yet, in this community of paranormal, ufology, whatever, people come forward to lecture on all the UFO cases as if that it automatically means that this was an extraterrestrial event, 90% of which aren't, and that they are in a position to speak about this with authority.
Sure.
Put it that way. Now, I don't know of any of those people who actually qualify. I'll tell you 3 ways in which I do qualify. George Norrie said, and I love this because I'm using it everywhere now, Michael Horn is the world's leading authority on UFOs. Well, I'm not going to argue with George. And here's why I would endorse that. With 40 years of research, I'm one of the more longstanding people in that field. Number 1, I represent the only scientifically proven, still ongoing UFO contact case that is now spanning over 77 years. Number 2, I've received information specifically for me, date and time stamped, warning about a trap that had been set for me. This was back 10 years ago in 2009, with advice from the player, and this was all passed to me in a document, advising me to maybe rethink proceeding with a project that had been set up to trap me and do great harm to me and Billy and all the rest. I thought that advice coming from these folks, since they'd taken the time to get it to me, I would follow it. Within days of notifying the person who was offering this opportunity, which was a trap, They unloaded, after I withdrew completely, they unloaded on their website 300 attacks against Meier and me, including death threats. I managed to get 3 separate companies to sequentially take down this person's website because it was so horrendous. Try and get anybody's website taken down, unless it's a Google thing or some far right posting. It isn't
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah.
So the third thing is I've been within 20 feet of a small play and monitoring craft, as have other people that I know. But those 3 ingredients in terms of in the so-called UFO community, that would qualify me in a way that none of the other persons, to the best of my knowledge, can qualify, especially with number 1, who represents an actual scientifically proven, still ongoing UFO contact case. Not Richard Dolan, not Corey Good, not David Wilcock, not Nick Pope, not you name it. And because of this, because in my opinion, this field is the least scientific. It is pathetic. There's no scientific criteria. People get upset if you call them out. Well, my goodness, what about in the real world when people make claims and they can't substantiate them?
Yes.
Are we supposed to walk on eggshells? It doesn't happen in the real world.
Yeah.
I do all my work for 40 years. Okay, we've got to be real about stuff. And I do what I do voluntarily for free for the Meier case. If I can make some money off of this by speaking at some UFO event, which doesn't happen very frequently, it isn't a great payday, but I'll do it. I will go almost anywhere, and I've all over the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll pay. Sometimes they pay, and they pay your expenses, and sometimes they don't. But this is so much more important than anything else I know of in life today. And the trivialization of this topic by people who are outright phonies and profiteers who are there to get some celebrity status for what it's worth or sell books or whatever, it is a betrayal of humankind. And here's why I say it. Every one of those people that I mentioned and more, almost everybody in the so-called UFO community, even Michael Salla and what's her name, Paula Harris and Alfred Weber and Stephen Bassett, every single one, Stephen Greer, I have provided Meier information to. I've offered them everything in the Meier case for their groups to vet and everything. Never a response, never a positive. Stephen Bassett figured out, it took him 2 weeks to figure out how to say no, he wouldn't do it.
I think that's by the way, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but it's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting because he's going to come on the show next Thursday. If you can tell him anything directly, what would you say to him?
I would say to him, because let me give you a little background on this. I have a total of about 6 hours over in 2 different occasions going back to the early 2000s to the mid 2000s of speaking with him at 2 separate events, one in Hollywood and one at the LAX Hilton, a whole life expo. And at the time, for the first one was around the time he was doing the so-called X conferences. And I said, Stephen, I'd like to present at your X conferences, since you're presenting this to people in the press. And well, no, we really young. We're not into that at this time. Okay, that was one. Then I came back to him a few years later. I said, look, I will be very glad to do, oh, no, we know it's authentic. Stephen Bassett told me this. He said the following. We know it's authentic. It's just not time for it yet. You got to send faxes to Washington.
Interesting.
Now, people like that, that's called a hack. And believe me, I waste no time. Right to his face anytime. And why, you said, well, what would I ask or what would I say? I would say to him, why have you, with your phony exopolitics, the extraterrestrials that really come to this world have nothing to do with politics, certainly not ours, and they don't live politically. Politics is a form of lying and advantage seeking. We're very good at it, and it's why we're in such a deep hole with the danger to our existence here at peak levels. So I say to Stephen Bassett, why have you, knowing and having admitted to me, unless he wants to deny it, that the Meier case is authentic, why did you choose instead to get people to run around, chase their tails, and send faxes to Washington to demand that the government reveals things that most of the government doesn't know, even if they're true? and much of which isn't true. Why are you a profiteer, a charlatan, a liar, a panderer, someone who wants to suck up all the oxygen in the room when the singular truth is available, freely available, and it can't be pushed on or inflicted on anybody, but it sure can be offered, and you've turned it down.
My goodness.
So, yeah, if you probably have that recorded. You can.
Well, I mean, the whole thing's
run
going
that.
to be recorded.
Yeah. Look, I'm not shy about it because I guarantee you there's no one in the audience who knows truly the extent of this, the full reason for these contacts, what is at stake. Nobody that wants to start talking about Pleiadians and Arcturians and all this, it's utter nonsense, because it's everything that people pick up off the internet and from the liars and phonies who I will debate anytime. I will tell you right now, on another group of liars and phonies, which are the skeptics. Years ago, I began to take on, actually in about 2000 or 2001, I started to take on the professional skeptics who were attacking the Meier case, just hurling all sorts of horrible stuff at them. And I defeated them to the point that just about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I sent out an invitation to all those aforementioned skeptics and 30 others that have various skeptic podcasts saying, how would you like to have the discussion or the debate now about the singularly authentic Billy Meier contacts? And there is, of course, another shoe I want to drop for you and your audience, and you may know it. And I will only say that not a one of them responded, wouldn't even tell me to go screw myself.
Wow.
Yeah, no, they're done. And I'll tell you why. So when I say something like the singularly authentic, only scientifically proven, let me tell you and the audience a little story. Some people might have heard it before. 2.5 or so years ago, in January of 2017, on a Saturday morning, I got a phone call about 8:30 in the morning from a gruff-sounding older guy, somewhere in my range, right? Saying, are you Michael Horn? Yes. You represent this Billy Meier case. Yeah. Are you willing to talk about it? I said, yeah, of course. That's what I do. He said, no, let me tell you, I think it could be a hoax. You still willing to talk? Guy was right on the edge with me. He didn't let you breathe. I said, yeah, let's go. For 3 months, every Saturday morning, this guy who only told me, he says, my name's Joe. I'm an investigator. That's all I need to tell you now. I said, fine. We go back and forth. He asks me questions. I give him the best info I can. Some stuff seems to sit well with him. Other stuff, he says, well, it doesn't make sense, but let's keep going. So he's taking notes. He disappears at the end of March and reappears late August 2017. And he says, you still willing to talk to me? I said, Joe, anytime. He said, okay, I'm going to tell you who I am, and then I'll tell you about your Billy Meier case. I said, okay. He said, I am the former top investigator and supervisor for the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation. Now, I'll tell you more, but check your email. So open up the email, and there are the documents, and clear. It's about him. It's from the government. It's from the Air Force, and this is $1 million man. He says, okay, you saw my stuff. I said I did. He says, when I was at the OSI, we don't care about UFOs. That's not what we do. We are tasked with protecting the security of the United States of America. And I, as an investigator and a supervisor, personally vetted hundreds of people. That means politicians, government officials, military people, people who might end up with their finger on that nuclear trigger. He says, we help to ferret out spies and moles. And take it from me, I've spent a lot of time investigating people, reading their body language, et cetera, et cetera. He said, I took the information that you gave me when we were talking, and I especially latched on to the 1964 evidence and information about Billy Meier from Switzerland in India. And I saw that article published in the Delhi Statesman newspaper, and I checked out the newspaper, and I checked out that reporter. And they both were highly credible. That paper had been there for 100 years. The reporter was a really credible guy. And what he said I focused in on was that Billy Meier, whose photo is in that interview, is a vagabond, 27 years old, wandering around the outskirts of Delhi, India, with a knapsack and an old Kodak camera, no money to speak of, but he's got an album with 80 UFO photos in 1964. And this reporter is describing some of them in that article, and some that are very unusual. He says, "You still have them. You've got a dozen of those." I looked at him. He was describing him. I'm reading, I'm looking, and there they are. Then I investigated this woman that you said was a former UN ambassador who'd been a child at this ashram in India where Meier supposedly spent time, and supposedly he's meeting with this extraterrestrial woman. And that this now retired UN ambassador, 12 years of the General Assembly, came forward in 1998 and gave a whole press conference, a video, everything, and along with another woman who was there, and they attested to the veracity of this. She showed some of Meier's photos and pointed out where they were taken. And he said, there's nothing in it for this woman to give up her privacy and come forward. And then he said, I looked at every video online on YouTube of Billy Meier. And I will tell you simply this. Billy Meier is the single most honest human being I have ever seen in my life. And I'm telling you, I've vetted them. I've been there. He is clean. And here's the story. Your Billy Meier UFO case is 100% ironclad authentic, and I will take on any skeptics in your behalf. And he did. Yes, indeed. He took on, as soon as his name comes to me, but he's a UFO guy that's got a blog. You've probably interviewed him, and he considers himself a UFO expert. And he also took on this other fellow who's from India. And he took them both apart very quickly and called me up about a week later. He says, I don't know how you can talk to these people. They don't understand the first thing about investigation. They don't know means, motive, and opportunity. They just talk about UFOs as if that makes them important. He says, I can't deal with those kind of people. They're a waste of my time. We put his article, it amounts to about 6 pages. It's up on my blog. And anybody who simply reads through it, he puts it in layman's language. He says, this is why. He says, unless a skeptic can show me now, after all these points, where Billy Meier gets 80 UFO photos in 1964, shows them to this reporter, he describes them, you've still got the photo. He says, the skeptics are done. You don't even have to worry. From that point on, you might as well start looking at everything that this man has, because there's no reason for him to lie. He's telling the truth. And that was rather profound. And this guy, Joe, I still speak to the guy. He's an expat. He doesn't live in this country anymore. He's a tough as nails kind of guy. And he's just told me many times, he says, that Billy Meier, he says, I don't know if everything in that case is true. He says, there's stuff in there I can't figure out, but he's telling the truth. He's meeting with these people, and those craft are real. I mean, who in the audience, who in the UFO community can say anything to that and not come off as a dope?
Right. And by the way, Michael, just let me jump in for 1 second,
sure,
really
please.
Quickly here. I just wanted to quickly say, Michael, if you were in your prime, do you think you could take out Stephen Bassett in a fight?
Well, I wouldn't have to be in my prime because he isn't.
Amazing.
Well, look, that's guy talk. You know what I'm saying?
Well, of course.
I enjoy that stuff. This morning I was in a training with a friend of mine, and at my age I don't look for fights, but I love.
Well, of course not. Yeah.
I love martial arts. I love military arts, military defense arts,
right,
because
right.
I just think that they're especially beautiful and fun. And if you are studying that with somebody who's a good teacher, you have no desire to inflict or be inflicted upon. You just want to understand how to actually be peaceful and non-aggressive. And that's why I laugh a little bit about, my reputation as an aggressive person. My gosh, I've had people, try to beat me up online with stuff. And there was a couple of guys on a show called The Paracast some years ago. I don't know if they're still around.
Oh, yes.
And you're right, and they're trying to work me over about Billy's. Oh, they were convinced Billy, this is a hoax. Turns out that those photos were analyzed 3 years ago, and they're absolutely authentic, unhoaxed, naturally, as they were then. But anyhow, these guys are carrying on, and I finally said to them, I'm going to tell you something. And they said, what? I said, there's only one of me, but I've got you both surrounded. And they said they thought it was a terrorist threat. I'm going, oh my God, little old me, what am I going to do here?
Well, tonight, Michael, we've mentioned Coast to Coast AM already. I'm pretty sure you're going to get an email from Dan Heiser pretty soon.
Oh, good.
That's usually how it goes.
Well, I don't know if they want me on again to tell you
Oh,
the truth,
I'm
or
sure they do.
well, we'll see. I mean, I speak over there with one of the producers every now and then and give her information about some of the stuff that's in the Meier material that I think she might want to be aware of. And sometimes she says, hey, well, you want to be on the show? I say, sure. But I sometimes just tell her because she's been instrumental in getting me on the show so many times. And I call her up as kind of a favor. Maybe, I don't know, half, three-quarters of the time she'll say, well, why don't you tell this on George's show? What I say, sure, fine, whatever. So that'd be fine if Tom wants to call. That'd be great. It's not. I. Oh gosh. I mean, there's so much to say here, Michael, because we are nobody in the UFO community that I know of. I could have missed stuff because I'm focused on this, but where are the people who are asking or positing the actual reason why an advanced space traveling race, if it exists, would contact us? What would the reason be? It isn't for us to chase lights in the sky. It isn't for people to have real or unreal careers. That isn't why an advanced, long-lived bunch of people from another world, hundreds of light years, would come here. They're not here to float Aunt Edna through the wall and abduct Uncle Joe and take our precious corrupted DNA and all the rest. But this is the disinformation crap that is promoted and promulgated endlessly online and in every other thing.
Yes, and before I get back into Billy Meier, I wanted to mention the Contact in the Desert story. I need to hear this one.
Oh, well, you mean the one I kind of told it, the one about I'm in the car and I get invited to present there after I'd sent that silly email in response to one of their emails asking me to buy tickets to the event. So that's what the Contact in the Desert story was. Victoria calls me. I'm expecting her, when I hear who she is, to chew me out for my snotty little email to them. And instead, she said she'd heard me on George's show and wants to book me to speak there, which she did. I did 2 presentations at the, Contact in the Desert.
They still owe me a T-shirt, by the way. Never sent it to me, but they kept the money, of course.
Ah, there you go.
Oy vey. Oy vey. How dare they, though? I was hoping a T-shirt would come in the mail, and it never did. Terrible.
Life is not fair all the time, as we know.
That's a bad business practice, though, Michael.
Well, I didn't ask for a T-shirt, and I didn't get one.
I'm glad you didn't
pay for one. Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't. It was a gift. But, oh well, that's neither here or there. So, Michael, one of the things that people really do try to press you about, and something you get lots of heat with, is the fact that you say the Billy Meier story is the story, and all the other stories are no good, because this one is actually backed scientifically, you say.
Well, that's one of the reasons. Here's the other thing. I'm unaware of anybody in the UFO community, and that includes people like Corey Good and David Wilcock, who come up with these fantastically goofy, delusional blue avian and all the rest of it. I'm unaware that any of them have ever presented any evidence.
No evidence, actually.
None.
Yes.
Zero. I mean, show it to me, somebody. Billy Meier has over 1,200 clear, still irreproducible, pre-digital UFO photos, films, video, sound recordings, and metal samples. All of these things independently analyzed. Nobody in the UFO community was allowed into the early investigation to any of the scientific examination because it was turned over to people at JPL, NASA, USGS, IBM, McDonnell Douglas, a lot of whom would disavow anything, but enough of whom signed off on it that you know that it's true. And then with Joe Tiss coming forward, who's going to try and float one by this guy who knows BS when he hears it, and he's going to say, okay, well, maybe you're telling the truth. Where's your evidence? And then you just hear crickets. So it's like, I don't care. I don't take it personally, even if it's intended that way. Somebody wants to attack me. I say, look, this is how life works. This is how science works. And all you unscientific people who think because you're interested in UFOs and ETs that you know a damn thing, get off it, learn something, and find out about what I was just talking about, the reason for these contacts. We are never going to meet these people. They're not coming down to land and pat us on the head. They've given us that which is invaluable if we only have the wit, the intelligence to learn, to pursue it, to find out. Because it is literally, as I started to say, 15 years ago in 2004, the Meier contacts are the key to our future survival. Now, in a world of video games and people who can't get their heads out of their 2D screens, everything is just another phrase, another saying, and you want to go on to the next thing. You're not going to go on to much in the coming years that isn't going to be confronting you, all of us, with massive, now unstoppable climate destruction of every form, as warned about as long ago as almost 70 years by Meier. That means Meier in 51, starting in 51, is the first person that I can find who specifically warns about unnatural, man-made climate change, climbing global warming, destruction to the ozone, connection between extracting petroleum, natural gas, mining of ores, and earthquakes and volcanic activity. It goes on and on. Where are these clowns that are offended by being called clowns, who think that we've got a couple new ones now. Who do we have? Jeremy Corbell and
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Is he a friend of yours?
No.
Look, I'll tell them all to their
No,
face.
he's not my friend.
Okay.
He's not no friend of mine.
Sather or something. Jordan Sather.
Yeah, these are a lot of hacky characters, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, they're all wannabes. Look, this field gives an opportunity to people who want to ride on something to make up some fancy sounding stuff. You've got Tom DeLonge.
Yes, we'll be getting into that in a moment here. Yes, we'll be talking about him. Yeah, we'll get into that in a moment here. But Michael, before we jump into the really juicy stuff here, I wanted to backtrack just a bit here and go back into the past, Michael. I wanted to know who is or was Michael Horn in another lifetime ago. What were you up to, Michael? I know you were a musician for a while. Tell me what's going on.
Okay, so I began in terms of, from teen years on. I was an art student. I was a painter in Chicago. I had people in the academia, teachers wanting to buy my paintings. I moved out of Chicago, moved to New York. I started the still existing fashion fad of fingernail art, which makes a lot of people, I don't know, for some reason, either irritated or whatever, but I don't know anybody else. I personally don't know anybody else who has created a more than 50-year running fashion fad, which I did just on a whim.
Wild.
Things that, I created certain things, invented things. I'm one of the first people to actually commercially do ebooks. We had a company in 1995 that had the name ebooks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I pioneered applications in water purification more than 50 years ago. Was my first foray into environmentalism. I wrote with a couple friends an environmental cartoon show warning about the dangers of air pollution, brought it to LA, but they weren't interested in air pollution then at that time. I wrote an award-winning environmental song in 1970 called Brother River. I wrote songs with a guy named Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys before he died. Carly Wilson, a singer. Carly Simon had done a song of mine years ago. I've had songs on TV. I've taught a program I created for seniors called Sit and Get Fit, a regenerative movement program that I taught average age 88, oldest students 101, 102. I taught this in places throughout LA for 16 years. I've practiced Tai Chi and Qigong for 40-something years. Oh, my gosh. There's more stuff. I went into different corporations and taught these stress relief programs. I created something called Standing in Spirit. I was taken to Europe by a consultant to Princess Diana to teach it to business people and government people in Holland and Germany. I created another therapeutic process called Future Self that I did with video, which is now a book that I have up on Amazon and on my site that teaches people how to actually do something useful useful with their damn cell phones, and that is to set their goals and interact with themselves audio visually using a cell phone, a tablet, or a computer. So when people come at me like these monkey brains in the UFO community who have risen like a cork in a bad sea.
That's what kills me the most, Michael, that these sort of characters come out of nowhere and they have these sort of strange cult like followers. It's a very unusual thing. The hero aspect, the brother, father, whatever that people see in these other individuals out there, because a lot of these guys, well, some fan bases out there, you get this really pulverizing public figure, whatever he's doing, and some folks will perceive that person like as a father figure or someone to that sort of extent. It's a very strange thing on the internet, and I've seen this sort of fandom show its ugly face time and time again. It's a very confusing thing.
Right, I agree with you, and I think what you should know is when people pop up like that and seem to have some wind in their sails. For instance, if you use Tom DeLonge as an example, maybe not of a father figure, but with the TTSA, that's all disinformation, and that's intelligence agency stuff designed to prepare people for a fake ET attack. If you look at their languaging, threat assessment and all that, the only threat assessment that needs to be done in the world is the threat that this country and its policies pose to virtually every peace-loving and non-peace-loving person on the face of the planet through our insidious espionage, terrorism, and warmongering. Forget about worrying about an attack from outer space. These attacks would come from our own secret military. That's just my little editorial on that. But you'll find that that is, well, I'll put it this way. That's the kind of stuff that is being used. Most of the active part of the UFO community with all these conferences and things and people rehashing all of this, that's encouraged because it takes the direction away from the only thing now that UFO cover-up is about, and that is the Meier case. I don't mind answering questions and challenges to that, but people have to start to learn, to think.
Yeah, that's the problem. Lots of individuals out there. And, oh, by the way, Michael, I must say, you are a Renaissance man.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're a man of many hats, Michael, after hearing that.
Well, let me tell you, I had no training in anything. I was completely useless for the first 27, 30 years of my life in terms of I had worked a total of perhaps 12 weeks in my life by the time I was 30, 28, 30. So I had a crash course in reality. I did everything that I needed to do. I had to raise a child by myself. I worked in car washes and restaurants and janitorial, any and everything, and then started to somehow find my way into doing the things that were popping up in my idea banks and creating different things. And I helped to build two companies into multi-million-dollar water purification companies as the sole salesman for both. I personally, for the second one I worked with, I flew to Seattle on my own dime with a one-page color brochure, one-pager, and I sold Starbucks on putting their systems in every Starbucks in the world at that time. So if I believe in something, to use that word, I go for it. So it's just that, kind of thing. And this is why I don't have patience for people who are poseurs. A Michael Salla, who was kicked out of academia because of his loony, unsubstantiated claims, he found a wonderful home in ufology and so-called exopolitics. Stephen Bassett, he ran for, I don't know whether it was a mayor or dog catcher. He wasn't elected and ended up having, no career. So he runs a so-called exopolitics BS thing, which has no reality, none. And I don't mind saying these things because I will say it to anybody's face.
Sure.
I've earned my way up. I've challenged Meier. I've tried to trick him on 4 separate occasions because I feel I owe it to myself and anybody else that if I'm going to represent something and I contractually represent them with no obligation, first of all, no money changes hands and no obligation to say anything, just that I'm authorized. I'm free to say what I want, include expressing doubts about things or saying I don't know if this is true. But I will go out there and do it because I know this is a good man. This is an honest man. Joe Tisk is right about that. And I discovered that myself. He's doesn't do anything fancy. He's not out there to play a guru. All this nonsense. Oh, it's a cult. Really? When was the last time somebody associated with Billy Meier knocked on your door?
By the way,
right? When did that happen?
By the way, Michael, in the chat
Sure.
room, one Patty Fletcher says it's been over 9 years now since I found the Meier case. The spiritual teaching is the most important. Salam.
That is right. That is right. Salome, yes.
Yes.
See, this is where this goes. When we were talking about the reason isn't, as we said, for people to chase lights in the sky or talk about UFOs. The UFOs were the eye candy. They basically, Meier's footage essentially really started the controversy. Oh, sure, there were some, obscure photographs coming forward for years of some object in the sky. Meier's stuff is so clear, people objected to its clarity because it, quote unquote, too good to be true. Okay, we get over that. And it was in reading thousands of pages of material where I'm going, oh my gosh, this UFOs, nothing compared to this, because this man is having conversations with, if you will, alleged extraterrestrials who are telling him things, who are answering his questions about just about anything you could want to know. And I'm going, wow, that's fascinating. I got that material in 1986 from a guy whose name is Ralph Amagran, yeah. And he, after I met him, he turned himself into another one of the liars in the community called Alex Collier. He created a fake persona.
Yes.
Yeah, Alex Collier, Andromeda contactee.
Mm-hmm. Michael, the reason why I was asking you these questions is because I am genuinely interested in everyone's background that I talk to, more so with those who get involved in ufology. Always an interesting story one has. And you were married at one time. Talk to me. Were you married at one time? You said you had a kid. Does that mean you were married, or did you have this child out of wedlock? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I don't mind. That marriage. I was in Los Angeles. I've done that formal thing several times with different people.
Right.
Marriage circumstances, but only one child that I raised myself.
Lucky.
And yeah,
that's a good thing.
It was the greatest experience.
Kids are expensive, Michael.
Well, I learned that, and I learned how to do a lot of things really quickly. I really did. And, I'm so grateful for that whole I'm grateful for everything that's happened to me.
Right.
Because I had no idea my life would ever go in this direction. So, sure, I was married then. It was actually my second marriage at the time.
You were a different person, basically, Michael.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting thing about reincarnation too. I'll tell you, but just to tell you, at that time, well, I was not a candidate for some of the things that came my way. I had to study real hard, like parenting and different things. But we're different people. See, this is the funny thing about so-called past life regression, which is an absolute phony, absolute hokey, unscientific bunch of BS. It can't be done. The people who are doing so-called hypnotic regression, no, it's a person.
You think that's BS, Michael?
Absolutely.
What about those that channel, though?
That's even worse. That is, I'll give you my experience with
Go
that.
ahead, yeah.
Starting in 1986, 87, I got involved in the early New Age stuff, right?
Right.
So I went to channeling events. Oh, there was Bashar, and there was.
I love Bashar, by the way. He's great. I like Bashar's act.
He's very entertaining.
He's got a great act. I think he's a master of psychological manipulation. I think he's fantastic. I like his act, but unfortunately, it's an act.
It's an act.
Sure.
And again, the problem, it's the same thing with all the rest of the people with the ET UFO thing. They take the attention away from a pursuit of something that they could find out for themselves is real and true. I remember saying after about 6 years in that whole field, I turned to somebody, they asked me about channeling. I said, I've gone to dozens of channeling events, and what I've come away with of really exceptional usefulness would fit into a sewing thimble with room left over for an Olympic swimming pool. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I've got a friend, a guy I've known over 40 years. He's in Arizona. He thinks he's channeling the Elohim.
Ah,
He doesn't even
yes.
know what he's doing. And I would argue with him. And finally, one day I said to him, does it go something like this, my friend? Greetings. We are your friends from above, and we are worshiping the very concept here that you are masters on your own plane of existence. You walk in divinity and dignity, and we honor you and extend our hand in friendship that we may tell you you are created. Okay, and he sat there, and it was like, I'm going, oh my God, this guy's too dumb to get it.
That's the bit.
Anybody can do this crap. And it's embarrassing that people took it seriously. I remember I wrote, among my songs, I wrote 2 songs. The first one in the New Age I wrote was, you got affirmations, you practice patience, you visualize and you chant, but down beneath, like a little thief, the belief still says, I can't. So you blame reality, cause duality. It's always got something up its sleeve. Well, the joke's on you, your aura too. You better take your karma and leave. New Age blues, someone dropped your crystal. New Age blues, better get a metaphysical. New Age blues, I don't want to hear about your energy. While you seek enlightenment, your uptightment's been driving your friends away. In your search for meaning, your cosmic scheming, you've forgotten how to play. There's so much anxiety to your piety. You're giving love a bad name. May we suggest lower consciousness and just give us all a break. New Age blues. Hey, babe, you celibate still? New Age blues. No wonder you're so miserable. New Age blues. I don't want to hear about your energy. Now you got some real bad news. You heard that your guru is trying to get in everyone's pants? Well, what do? The joke's on you. And that's the name of this dance. So if you let love speak, you don't need technique because love always knows the way. Stop trying to be happy. You won't feel so crappy. Everything will be okay. New Age. It goes on and on. So
I love that.
That's up on CD Baby too. That along with Leave Your Body, which was, darling, you mean so much to me, you and all your entities. But when I want some love and passion, I don't want to share the action with them dead Egyptians or Tibetans, outer space folks trying to get in. I can set your spirit free. Just leave your body here with me. And it goes on from there. So, I was having a lot of fun with all that stuff.
With B.B. King on guitar, right?
I was doing my own guitar, but I wish it would have had B.B. King on guitar. That would have been something else. But yeah, so, I did all that stuff. I went through that phase. I even was in Hawaii once, and Bashar, Daryl was doing stuff, and I opened for him. I did some songs for him. But it's all, okay, it's funny. But it's not funny anymore because all of this has misled people.
Some people do take it very seriously, though, for sure. That's when it becomes dangerous.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
many of his followers there, they seem to be completely enthralled into his act. They were just completely hypnotized by it. Really, it was something else because I could tell these people wholeheartedly believed it. And by the way, a few episodes back, the name of the episode was actually Elohim as well. I thought that was kind of weird.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah, it's episode 183, by the way.
Oh my.
Weird coincidence there.
Oh my gosh. Well, what are you going to do? So many people don't want, Patty brought up the spiritual teaching. That is the core reason for this case existing. And that is a non-religious, belief-free teaching. It's not something you read and you go, oh, that's true because it says it's true or because some authority tells me. It's like if you want to learn how to repair something that's electronic in nature, and you get a course book and it tells you, and you start here, and it teaches you how to correctly attach this wire to that terminal or whatever. If you have a good instruction, as you follow through with the instruction, you are getting the promised results, and you are learning how to do that. Well, the spiritual teaching is precisely that. And major part of that foundation is for us, the human beings of Earth, to learn how to think, not to believe, not to have faith in things, not to be following this and running off and doing that and joining this ism or that ism. We can if we want to, but if we learn how to think, we truly learn how to empower ourselves and craft our lives and progress forward. And I think for myself, part of what happened before I knew that as a teaching, that was gnawing at me to pull myself together, to take responsibility for my life and everything in it, a child that I brought into the world as well, become self-supporting. Maybe I'm not out there now on TV, been playing. That isn't what's going to happen now. I'm going to feed us. I'm going to be a janitor. I'm going to be working in a car wash. I'm going to be working as a fry cook or a busboy at IHOP. I did that. Or a brief stint in New York City, my first job, 9
Right.
days in a pornographic bookstore in 1969, 70. I'd never seen anything like it in my life.
Wow.
And on and on and on. So I kind of got a crash course in reality. And I honestly, some things, I don't quite know how I survived them. I'm grateful that I did. And I feel like I want to give back as much as I can so that people who can assist, who are willing to be responsible for themselves, can be pointed to some material that they can check out for themselves. And if they resonate with it, they have their own self-study course. They can meet with other like-minded people if they want. It's not mandatory. You don't have to join anything. It's different. It's a different approach because as the material is represented, and I have to agree with it after these years of reading, this is a very, very high level, clean, clear, comprehensible study that you can apply from the first day you start reading it, because it takes you to a different place of clarity in your own being. And it is at least one lifetime long study.
Right.
And for those that might many, many more.
Yes, sir.
That's, yeah.
And Michael, again, going back to the spiritual teaching, that reminded me, I should have asked you this a little bit earlier, but when you were a boy, did your parents force religion onto you like normally everyone else parents typically do?
One of the things I'm most grateful for is that they didn't.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I remember where I was. I was about 10 years old, and I walked up to my mother in the house and I said, I want to know the truth about God and Jesus, out of nowhere.
Wow.
Yeah. And she said, well, all I could tell you is I think God is love, and the rest you'll have to find out for yourself. And I can finally say that on both accounts of what Jesus, by the way, there never was a human being who walked the face of the earth named Jesus Christ. There is zero historical record for him.
That's what that's what a scholar was saying as well. And I brought it up to a very religious guy, and once those words left my mouth and entered his ears, I could tell he wanted to strangle me.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing for the very devout to consider, but I've said to people, send me one of the biographies done by one of the 60 or so historians who lived in that area at that time. Send me the biography of Jesus Christ. There's no such thing. And was there a man that lived at that time? Now, there are things I can prove and the things I can't prove.
Sure.
So I like to say, according to the information in the case, there was a man who lived at that time upon whose life the fictionalized Jesus Christ was based. And that man was called, according to this, Emmanuel, a name that you will find Isaiah mentioned in 7:14 and Matthew in 1:23, respectively, Old Testament and New Testament, one time in each of the testaments that I know of. And his name shall be called Emmanuel, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. And then the rest of it is the fictionalized Jesus Christ. There is a book out. It's called the Talmud Emmanuel. It's an incredible book. It is presented as the original writing and teaching of Emmanuel, with a biography on his life, what happened to him after the crucifixion, which he did endure, his life, and travels through several countries post-crucifixion, ending up in India, where his mother Mary died, where he marries an Indian woman at age 48, bears numerous descendants, one of whom named Joseph, 70 years after the crucifixion, brings the teaching, the written teaching, which was transcribed by his actual trusted scribe Judas Iscariot, not Judah Iscariot, who was the son of a Pharisee,
Right.
who sequesters it in the tomb of the crucifixion 70 years later, where nobody's just hovering around any longer caring about it. And so Meier had been told at a very early age, and a couple other times, his role in discovering this, which occurred in 1963 with the help of a former Greek Orthodox priest. They were led telepathically, we're told, again, can't prove this, by the Pleiaren to the area on the outskirts of Old Jerusalem, where there was what appeared to be a hillside or a burn with a little hole at the base of it that they dug their way in with, apparatus just digging their way in. And it was an ancient tomb with stones on the floor. Meier knew that his task was to start unearthing the stones because there would be something there for him. And indeed, they then found the resin-encrusted animal skin wrapped scrolls that had these sheets written in Aramaic, and they were entrusted to Isa Rashid, the ex-Greek Orthodox priest, because he could read and write both Aramaic and German in addition to his own language. And over a period of, I think it was 4 years, he worked on translating it, sent the finished scrolls to Meier somewhere around 1970 with a letter saying some very powerful people in religious interests in Jerusalem found out that he had something of value. He and his family had to leave. They were taking the scrolls. He ended up going into a refugee village in Lebanon and hiding the scrolls in the walls of one of the buildings there where he and his family stayed. Within 1 week, and there are actually newspaper clippings of this part of it, the Israelis came and bombed that particular village for no reason anybody knew. He and his family escaped with their lives. The scrolls were destroyed. Meier had a portion, about a third of it, translated. And then Meier got word, I think around 1974, that Isa Rashid and his family had been ostensibly machine gunned to death in Baghdad by the Mossad. And what we have today is the refined translation from the original translation of Isa Rashid. Fascinating things, 17 female disciples we hear nothing about. How Emmanuel did the various healings that were attributed. He couldn't, of course, raise anybody from the dead, but he had been tutored in advanced herbology, meditation, suggested, we might call it something similar to Ericksonian hypnosis. A fantastic book. And many things you'll find, like the Sermon on the Mount and other things, you see where the differences are. And this book attracted in about 1990 the attention of a Professor James Deardorff from Oregon State University, who, in addition to being, I think, a professor of meteorology, was comparative religions. And he heard about the book. He said, aha, let me add it, another Bible hoax. And a year or two later, after doing all his research, he published a book called Celestial Teachings. And his position was, the Talmud Emmanuel is the original writing of the man we've come to know as Jesus, and it resolves over 350 inconsistencies that have troubled scholars about the book of Matthew, 125 of which weren't even mentioned until after this text was verifiably discovered and translated. And Deardorff became very instrumental in helping to, really get the conversation about the Meier case and even the ufology part. He had friends at Oregon State University who were professors of forestry. So he took some of Meier's UFO photos, where the UFOs by the tree, and he sent it to some of the professors and said, hey, guys, forget the silver thing. Are those model trees? Are those miniatures? And they all wrote back saying, oh, no, that's a such and such Albies, this or that, that's about 40 feet tall. You can tell because of the nesting at the top, the prune mark, the whole thing. But they're all saying, but what is that silver thing anyhow? So he played a remarkable role, just on his own, self-obligated, at helping to bring awareness of the spiritual teaching of the Meier case. Just a really great guy. I knew him years ago. Just a really decent fellow. Very, very interesting. He wasn't happy with everything in the Meier case, I can tell you that, but he knew it was real. And because the religious part of it, man, he was just all over why this sentence translated the way it's in the Talmud makes sense, and this in Matthew doesn't make sense. And we've just taken it on faith for centuries and centuries and centuries. So fascinating piece of the Meier case.
Yeah, very interesting. I had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know about that part.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's It's so vast. It's unimaginable. We only have perhaps about 1/8, maybe, if that much, of the 45,000 pages translated from German to English. And with that little, we've already charted over 250 specific, error-free examples of prophetically accurate scientific and world event-related information. One of them just came up the other day. I put it on my blog. I'm just see really quickly if I grab it here. I'll tell you what it was as things load slowly here for whatever reasons.
And no worries.
You know that problem with the computer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here. Oh, it's actually loading. All right. I have one of my blog articles is called "Brain Damage from Space Travel and Bad Attitude."
Yes, and by the way, that's theyflyblog.com, just in case anybody wants to follow along.
Thank you. And I don't know if it's called the byline. NASA discovered still decades behind UFO contactee Billy Meier. So what it was is that there was a NASA-funded study, and I said there's two important things that the study demonstrated. Number one, that space travel to Mars and other places in deep space could have negative impacts on the functions of the human brain, the mind, and the body. Okay. The second thing I said, number two, that we learned and established, NASA needs to stop denying the singularly authenticity of the Billy Meier UFO contacts, learned many invaluable things, and not need 38 years to make such new discoveries. Now, the reason I put that is because in the blog, right below all that, I have copied some of the bullet points from what's called Contact Report 150, published October 10th, 1981, 38 years ago, that has been on my website for over 10 years. And here in this, I'm not going to read it all, but I bolded a lot of the stuff because Billy's asking one of his alleged extraterrestrial buddies about, our primitive kind of space flight could lead to some severe damage, couldn't it? He says to the guy, explained that something will happen with the brains of these people.
Interesting.
So, here's what he says. Radiations, vibrations, and the like, unprotected missiles and similar protective suits, as well as the weightlessness of interstellar space, lead to health damages in the brain and in the bones of human and many other life forms. The first reaction of severe brain injury that I mentioned, for example, this is Quetzal speaking supposedly, leads to barely detectable brain swelling in very slight cases, which will, after some time, lead to thought and action uncertainty, and then inevitably result in reaction loss, such as, for example, the sudden loss of control of a vehicle or aircraft or the appearance of total errors against all reason. However, if a human or any other life form lingers for a very long time, such as many months or years, unprotected in weightlessness in space, then the initially developing brain swelling of an inflamed form will suddenly develop in reverse sequence, by which brain atrophy then develops, as with weak thinking in elderly people. Even the brain substance itself suffers a loss. Thus, the entire brain mass passes through this phenomenon of a pathological nature. The illness originating from these factors ignites the brain substances and the brain organs themselves, after which a new short-term illness factor arises, which expresses itself as a decrease of brain activity through a kind of cerebral palsy substance, which then leads to the general shrinkage of total brain mass, which can no longer be stopped by human and medical and other similar means. If the person lingers long enough unprotected and weightlessly in space, then the brain contraction ultimately leads to the point where the person loses absolute control over himself, his thinking and actions in life. The ultimate end then is insanity and death. Now, what does Corey Good want to tell us about blue avions in the light of that? This is 38 years, 10 times as much information of a detailed, very interestingly detailed medical nature, giving us progression based on duration, all sorts of stuff, based on one question Billy Meier asked 38 years ago, and now NASA discovers. Well, I went up to what's called the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, up in Flagstaff, Arizona, to meet with a man. He didn't know he was going to meet with me, but he was kind enough to do it when I impromptu arrived, about their work with the NASA Mars rover. There's a whole thing going on with the Mars mission and all this stuff. And this guy,
Apparently,
he's a very nice
yes.
guy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, apparently there is.
Yes. And this fellow, who's a scientist named Ken Herkenhoff, first of all, he was very nice to take a meeting with me with no arrangements whatsoever. And he was just a very generally nice guy. But he was stymied by the fact that all of the so-called new discoveries on Mars, pretending the canals, the substances that are in them, the volcanic ash, the nature of the rivers, the dried up rivers, the amount of water and ice there, the fact that there's lightning. He didn't either know it or he didn't realize that which he knew I could prove to him and did was already published 20 or 30 years before he learned it. It didn't sit terribly well with him because, after all, he's a Mars scientist at the USGS, nice fellow that he is. And, well, what am I? I'm just a guy showing up there, with a book full of UFO photos that he didn't want to look at. That scared him. So here's the problem. We have all these people that know everything, or so they think. And when you kind of get up close and personal and you want to instruct all those who know so much, they fall apart because they have to toe a party line. There are very, very few true scientists operating these days. People who go, I want to know. I'm going to look at that evidence. I had an experience at the university here. I've lectured twice up at NAU, and I happen to I tend to walk into things a little, unannounced. And a couple of years ago, I did that at the university. I walked into an astronomy club meeting, and I was welcomed. They must have thought I'd belong there. And I recognized when one of the professors came in, and I said, "Oh, you're Professor so-and-so." "Oh, yes." And I said, "Well, I'd like to show you some interesting stuff. Come to my office tomorrow, 3:00. I thought, that's really nice of her. I didn't realize until later she probably thought I was a student there too, being a bit older than everybody else. But I
Right.
came the next day with the photo book, 617 of Meier's incredible, primarily daytime UFO photos that had been newly digitized for clarity. Nothing was done, no alterations. And for 1 hour, she sat, asked me endless questions. Her eyes were the size of friggin' saucers. She was blown away.
Blown away. Right.
Completely. Said, come back next week. I want to introduce you to this professor next door. He's not here. I came back next week. As I walked to her door, she was visibly shaking. I was wondering why. I came in and I said, "Professor, I don't want to use your name right now. She deserves it." And she said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you anymore." And she's just shaking and muttering, right?
Weird.
And yeah. So at that point, the head of the astronomy department walks in and says, "Oh, sir, we'd really like it. I'd appreciate it if you'd come with me, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how things work here." And I said, "Absolutely, I'd be delighted, sir." He said, "Look, you can't just walk in and first of all, and just go to the astronomy workshop." I said, "Oh, I didn't know that, honestly." He said, "Oh, well, it's okay, as long as you understand now that we can't have that. And you must have said some things that were," well, I'm going to probably use her name here. "You might have upset Professor Chen a little bit, talking about her ancestors coming to our world 26,000 years ago."
Oh, no.
Yes. Because in the Meier material, there's a lot of information about the original races that we would call Asian or Oriental.
People get mad at that.
The final
Right.
colonization here was about 26,000 years ago. So, poor woman, he's trying to tell me why it's important. "You see," he says to me, "we're here to educate students, turn out teachers to go out and teach astronomy and all this. And I have a family. I have a wife." I'm going, "What is he telling me? He's got a family."
That's true.
Something's right. So, I figured our time for our little meeting was coming to an end. And I said, "Well, Professor Tegler, would you like to see this book of Billy Meier's UFO photos?" "Oh, no. I'm not interested in photos. When you have a piece of a bumper, well, why don't you bring it to me then?" And I said, I see. "Well, okay, sure. Before I go, would you just show me the piece of Pluto that you have here?" He said, "What piece of Pluto?" I said, You have what? Photographs of Pluto?" "Okay, touche. Yes, we have photographs." I said, "Yes. Your closest photographs of Pluto are 8,000 miles and change, and Mr. Meier here in this book took his photos, some of them within 15 feet of these objects. So it's very kind of you to have me here, and I thank you very much for your time. And off I went. I finding when you find scientists that are really scientific, that'll say, "Oh, look, I did find one there a few years ago in the anthropology department. A guy, I went to see him speak. He was one of a bunch of skeptics who were speaking at an event there, and I wanted to hear what the skeptics were saying. He was really good. I wanted to talk to him, but he disappeared. So I went down to a local club one night with my guitar. I was going to do some singing, and he walks in with his guitar.
Oh,
This old, an old
nice.
folk. Call him over. Hey. And we get to talking, and I say, "Okay, I know who you are." And I said, "I've got something kind of I'm involved in, and a few words here." He says, "Well, now, you heard me talk at that presentation. I'm a tough nut to crack. Don't give me any BS." I said, "Fine, you determine." 4 months, we went back and forth, phone, emails. Then we started to have lunch every Saturday. And finally, one day he says, "Okay, you've got to present this in my class." He had me come twice. And the kicker on that was amazing, because what happened was, do you kind of remember, what was it, November perhaps of November of 2015? In Europe, there was an Islamic attacks in Paris, and there was a terrible destruction in Paris from Islamists, technically, not from Islamic, but Islamist. And what happened was, there was a lot of fires in Paris. Maybe if you might remember some of this stuff. Okay.
I do, yeah.
So, all right.
Mhm.
So he sent me an email. Actually, if I'm recalling correctly, it's probably right in front of me here somewhere. Yeah, he sent me an email. I think it was on the 17th, and he said a couple interesting things. He said, "I'm really surprised it's taken so long for you to get a Meier-related gig at a university. I think that universities would be more open-minded. As educators, as students, we certainly don't need to accept everything a person might say as fact, but we typically are not so narrow-minded that we refuse to give it a lesson. Your talk is secular. It promotes no political agenda. It's not the least bit dangerous or radical. Rather, it is thought-provoking. Provoking thought is what universities are about. It's all too common today for people who think they know better to automatically dismiss alternate views. People who aren't willing to listen are directly or indirectly responsible for the sad condition our planet is in today." This is from this wonderful professor up at NAU. At ASU, 4 or 5 years ago, they banned my new film, which is now up on Amazon. They wouldn't allow it to be shown on the Meier case. So here's the thing that was a kicker, because he, in this email exchange and I posted it on my blog, he said to me, "More on this later, but guess what was the first thing I said to my wife when we first heard about the Paris bombings? I knew this was on its way. Thanks. I had sent him Meier's warnings from 81 about what was going to start to take place in France. I'd sent it to him only a few weeks before. Then the attacks take place, and he knew, okay, this is real. Come on in." So this is part of what goes on. And this is why, if people want to get upset about me and my attitude towards the UF, give me something to work with. Hey, and here's the other thing. I've got nothing against the fact that there could be other real, genuine, ongoing UFO contactees. That'd be fine. But you're going to have to provide the real evidence, not just expect me to fall for your BS.
Absolutely. And again, one of the things that many people tend to just fall victim to is unsubstantiated claims.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And lots of folks tell me things like, "Well, you do this show, do you believe everyone you talk to?" And the answer is usually no. And of course, if I start every show just saying, "Where's the evidence?" I mean, it's going to be a pretty short show. Let's be realistic here, right?
I know, but it's got to be that way, because you can't. I mean, look, I think that this is a field. I would tell people, honestly, I'd say get out of the UFO, paranormal, etc. field. Well, why would you say a thing like that? Because we're going to either move into the age of truth and knowledge, the real stuff, or we're going to be left behind. We're going to be left behind with beliefs, and there's no room for beliefs. There just isn't. So with what's coming, and this is of course huge now, environmentally, what's coming to us uh, in so many ways, and a lot of it has been specifically laid out. We don't have the luxury of being childish and indulging in all this stuff that is truly basically nonsense. It's been fun. It's been an interesting ride. It's opened the door, in many ways for legitimate things, not just my thing, but legitimate interest in, earlier civilizations and all, even though most people that lecture on that don't know a damn thing. I mean, if they'd read the Meier material, they'd know it, but they don't because they're too proud. They want to be, I just discovered the secret of the pyramid. Okay, go ahead. You're going to bore my butt off because you don't know anything. And everybody's going to think you're the expert. And anyway, so I don't care in that sense. I care in another sense because I care about people in life and what's happening. I'm not making a fortune from this, obviously, and I wouldn't mind, help, give me send me big bonuses or something.
Right.
I just trust life. I trust life that if I keep doing what I need to do by my own self, definition, I will find each day I'm still here. I can do it. I'm still on planet doing my work until I'm not, but I'm not going to, fall apart, in fear and, well, what do I do? How do I make it? No, I'm doing this. This is what I do, and the rest is going to work out. It's kind of, I have a bumper sticker, trust life. I have another one, lose hair now, ask me how, but a lot of people are interested in that for some reason.
Yes.
But anyway, do you have any challenges or questions? I mean, I don't mind trying to address them. I don't have the answers to everything, but
no problem. I did want to ask you again about To the Stars Academy. We didn't really get a chance to go over that too thoroughly, but I did want to get your reaction and opinion to the Stars Academy. They were making headlines, of course, led by one Tom DeLonge.
Right.
And many people were very skeptical of the whole organization, and of course they are very skeptical of one Tom DeLonge for purposes not necessarily needing to be repeated right now, but you get the drift.
Okay. Yeah, and I may know nothing about that. I would say they have very good reason to be skeptical. Virtually everybody involved with that, it claims to be a former spook. Forget that former part. This is an intelligence op. This is an agenda. I'll tell you why. Part of it is helpful, but most of it isn't. Recently, Christopher Mellon, the former Defense Department Pentagon guy, gave a 4-minute interview on Fox News, and he said, now this is a guy speaking as a Defense Department intelligence Pentagon person. You can say former or not, but he's not going to say these things without it being approved. He said, in effect, we know UFOs are real. We don't know their origin, and we don't fully understand their technology. That's a friggin' major thing to say. But it was very nice that he did, because he's, a top-level military defense guy. And fortunately, my friend Joe, who has done all this wonderful work for us, for the truth, as far as I'm concerned, he didn't do it on purpose for anybody. He answered where these are from, because Meier's stuff is authentic, singularly. And as far as the technology, naturally, we are idiotic. We focus too much on the technology that we're not ready for, because we will use it as we're using it already for weaponry. And so the Tom DeLonge to the Stars Academy, I sent them, I knew they'd never respond. I sent information, Billy Meier, hi, guys, have you heard of this? All that. No, of course, no response. They know who Meier is. I mean, Tom DeLonge used some of Meier's photos without attribution, and Tom DeLonge knows that there's a Billy Meier case, but he's too stupid to have gone farther into it. I don't think the guys working with him are stupid at all. I think they're very cynical. I think that they are doing what they're doing for very, very specific reasons, which, as I said, could have, if things go a certain way, the fake ET attack. They also get to direct the narrative for a lot of people, in addition to sucking up a lot of money from dopey people who want to contribute to this. So they get to further the control. The problem is it's a suicidal approach, because that which faces the planet in terms of real damage and destruction, which is unstoppable, forget all the nice cosmetic little feel-good environmental stuff, and I've been an environmentalist for over 50 years. We can keep trying to do nice little things. We should, but we are not touching climate change. We are not touching atmospheric damage. We are not touching ozone damage. We are not touching the death of the oceans. We are not touching the radioactive contamination. Not right now. It's right now mainly feel-good stuff. And I was at an event today here, people, all about climate change, good people. And I'm going to try to educate them, because when they get the real story, they're going to get a little depressed, and we'll see how far they want to go. And by the way, what a lot of people can get up in arms about is very simple. Every one of these problems, basically everything facing us as a problem, is due to rampant, here it comes, overpopulation, which can be cured not through eugenics and genocide and all that, which there is a danger of, and the danger that it will come from some very vested interests that are often referred to as the elite, the deep state, etc., in order to level off the population, because that is simply the core reason. And I can do 10 minutes of that at another point and explain it to anybody who can think. Anybody who has an aquarium can figure this one out. But of course, if you're religiously minded, oh my gosh, go forth and multiply. Or if you're politically minded and you're on the political right, oh, they're trying to limit this and do that to us and our freedom and our rights to bear 15 kids and all that. So human beings are generically stupid. We're ignorant for sure. That includes all of us, because we're ignorant of things. That's not bad. We just don't know. But many people are stupid, and that is harder to deal with. And it's harder to try to communicate with people who are stupid and in denial of scientific fact, easily determined stuff. And the Meier case is very loud about that. And they're saying, if we don't get under control, we may not literally survive on the planet. Quite literally. And that's taken a far more pessimistic slant even than they had before. And that surprised me, because the depth of what is really going on. And Meier was warned about it in detail 70 and more years ago. We've got those documents from his first teacher. And for instance, in a document from 1948, his teacher is warning about all this stuff, says, after 2015, 2016, there will be earthquakes that will start to arise in central Italy. These will be the precursors to the volcanic eruptions which will be following, with Mount Marsili, Etna, Vesuvius, Stromboli, and Campi Flegrei. Ultimately, when Campi Flegrei goes, and the other ones, parts of Italy will go into the sea. We will see the eruption in ever-increasing numbers of undersea volcanoes, which in 1948 we didn't even know existed. And just in the past 2 years, those earthquakes took place in Italy, still occasionally rumbling through, and all 5 of those volcanoes have become active. Stromboli erupting just not too long ago. We are dumber than sand. I mean, we're dumb.
I think there's no denying that, Mr. Horn.
No, there isn't. And so for people, this is where I like to be able to get to this. And Michael, I'm very appreciative of this opportunity, because we don't have to waste our time, oohing and eyeing too much over the UFO thing. Yeah, UFOs, it's great. Okay, Billy Meier. We're talking about literally our future survival. And we will be seeing manifestations. There are things happening with microplastic fibers that are now finding their way into the flesh of fish. I mean, things that our scientists won't talk about. The extent of the deadly damage from glyphosate. They've published this, the whole thing with the 5G.
And glyphosate, right.
We are killing ourselves off for a buck. Why are we doing that? Because the way we human beings respond, we don't notice that we are breeding more human organisms. We're just worried about, how are we ever going to get enough energy? How are we ever going to grow enough plants? We don't think it's because the demand is increasing. The demand is increasing. Now, if we looked at that and we said, well, wait a minute. You mean if we could slow up the demand, nature might catch up? Yeah, that's right. Well, how could we do that? Well, you don't have to kill anybody. You do put birth stoppages in place. You say, look, we have to do this for our survival. Oh, but my rights, we know it's pretty rough. You're not going to be able to have a kid maybe for 7 years, maybe longer, and maybe not. But we're all humans in this together. We've let ourselves breed irresponsibly because of your go forth and multiply. Nobody ever said, what, is there such time as stop, period, at the end of anything, or is it just endless? Well, no. It's, everything will be fine. It was always been enough. We've got plenty of room. The play Aaron gave Meier all these figures on the real nature of arable land, of how much there is and how much there isn't, and stuff that we never even think about. The danger of atmospheric collapse that our scientists don't even talk about.
Yes.
And it's not for doom and gloom.
What was that, Michael? Sorry.
I was just saying, no, I stopped because I heard you wanted to speak, but I said, it's not for the sake of doom and gloom. We're not trying to, here's the thing. Remember when we started, I said, nobody ever asks, what's the reason? If there's really the most important development in human history, AT race exists and it's contacted somebody for almost 80 years. Why? Meier's not running around screaming, pounding on the, no, he's publishing his information because it has to be done that way. We can't be forced or coerced, or we'll start another idiotic religion with more people killing each other over imaginary deities and all the rest of this stuff. Sorry, folks. So they don't do it. There's no cult going on there.
I was just about to ask. Yeah, I was just about to ask you, Michael, if you think religion is dangerous, and I think I got the answer.
Yeah, I put out a video online. Politics makes people stupid because they think that it does. Anytime you're getting partisan about something.
Let's get it right into that. We are running out of time, and we do have a couple more minutes, and that's one of the things I did want to get into with you here.
Sure.
The article, "The Wrong Man," and I'm with you on a lot of with most of this article. I think this is pretty accurate here.
Well, here's the thing to explain to people maybe that aren't looking at that article right now. When Trump, and Clinton were running for office, I wasn't particularly enthralled with Trump. I certainly wasn't enthralled with Clinton. The material in the Meier case going back 11 years spelled out that she not only won't have power laid in her hands, but if it had ever come to the fact that she could take the reins of power, she would institute a nuclear destruction. That would have been it. And they told Meier in 2008 that she will not. And they told Meier also in June that Trump would be the president, but he wasn't allowed to say anything until, the day after the election. And he asked why. And they said, well, because there are people, if they knew now that he wins, because they're all expecting his opponent, they would kill him. And that would be people involved in the Secret Services and Democrat Party. And he said, well, what's this all about? Yeah, they told him that. In June, and they said to him, after the election, there's going to be a controversy raised by his opponents that will be based on false claims that he colluded with the Russians. We don't know yet how this will play out. We're not saying anything about it, but that will happen. Now, so Billy said, well, what about this guy? They said, well, he's not too good, not too bad. He's a kind of chaotic, catastrophic personality, but he's got some good ideas. Seems like he really cares about his country, and if he can keep the U.S. out of globalization, and if he can get the right environmental policies and get health care for the people, then he could do good things. But this is all doubtful because the people who will be around him will try to steer him in other directions. Oh, they also said if he can make a detente and peace with Russia, and then they also said, but this will be doubtful because he'll be steered away. Okay, so what happened is recently also they went into in depth how dangerous he has become through his irrationality, through being manipulated and controlled by those around him, through his chaotic nature, his short attention span, and that he's actually kind of a stupid person when it comes down to it. He's shrewd, he's nasty, he is out of his league in international relations, and that now that he's provoking China and Russia openly, it's extremely dangerous because in the prophecies in this case, going back 10,000 plus years, the United States of America pushes Russia into a war that the United States of America ceases to exist because of. That's us. And in that document that was officially published only in 1987, where he also says the destruction of the World Trade Center, the WTC, by terrorists will be only the beginning of events that will befall America that will be unbelievable to the people of the earth. There are other things in that document also that happened subsequent to 2001 and what have you. This is where it's voluminous, Michael. It's voluminous. And when you get in, I put a video online 2-3 years ago, Meier saying, about the election. He said, this is my opinion. This is before they published it was in May, I think, of 2015. He said, if Hillary Clinton wins the election, in my opinion, the devil is loose. And with Trump, if he wins, it's just as dumb.
Interesting.
And then he went on to say, yeah, because Meier predicted the 2 civil wars. I asked him about them. And he said, when the last time I just saw him in May, I said, so the civil wars are still on then? He said, America will destroy itself.
It seems like that, first. Right? It almost seems like that's...
it's underway.
Yeah, it seems like that might just come to fruition, Mr. Horn.
Well, Mr. Horn,
I like to be formal.
I only insist that my children call me that. No, I'm kidding. Here's the thing with the Trump article and all this stuff.
Yeah.
If people do not learn to become reasonable and absolutely bury political partisan politics, we will destroy ourselves through civil war that way, as other places do, because once you think politically, you're thinking in terms of advantage. You're not thinking in terms of principle. When human beings can agree on core principles in life, certainly we can disagree on how to get there, but we don't trade favors. We don't do something that somebody wants if they'll do something that we want, which might be just crap and no good for anything. As long as we think politically, we are stupid and we get, God damn it, what we deserve. And what we're going to deserve here, pardon me, is we're going to get the civil wars. We're going to get the Russians and the Chinese cleaning our clock. And it's described how it will happen because these idiots are pushing it forward.
Yes, with all the world conflicts brewing, it certainly seems like something will be going off soon. We are at that tipping point.
It's already see, here's the thing we have to remember, Michael. It's already going off for other people in other countries because we don't see the mushroom cloud, let's say, or because something hasn't been widely publicized. It doesn't mean that people in the other parts of the world aren't suffering.
Well, I agree with
aggression,
you on,
terrorism.
Oh, I agree with you with that assessment. Around the world, those folks out there, for them, it really is the end of days.
Yeah, and in 2015, Meier published something. He said, since 2001 up until today, 2015, only 6 so-called terrorist acts in the United States out of 175 did not lead back to the American Secret Services, FBI, etc. That's coming from the Swiss over there.
Interesting.
Only 6 of 175, in other words, weren't either false flags or, whatever you want to call them, set up. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I mean, I know there's a conspiracy to keep the Meier case from people. That's obvious. It's obvious. You can get every other bit of nonsense. You'll get these,
Well, Michael, conspiracies are real. That's why people go to jail for them.
Yeah, it's true. Not everyone that we hear about is real. And some things have gotten so out of hand. I'm not a fan of Q and all this stuff.
Neither am I.
Because that, good. Okay. I mean, to me, that's the most ridiculous thing. It posits Donald J. Trump as the center of the universe. It doesn't warn about any of the crappy polls or any of the mistakes that get made or anything else going on. It's all cryptic. Here's a movement. You people that are sitting on your butts, try and figure out this crossword puzzle because you're really a movement of force in the world. You're nothing. You're a bunch of idiots trying to decipher cryptic BS while the world is marching itself to a lot of disaster. That's where it is. So Trump may very well be reelected because the Democrats, with the exception, in my opinion, of Tulsi Gabbard.
You were reading my mind here, Michael, just as I was going to ask you who you think might become the Democratic candidate for potentially be president here. I was curious what your thoughts and opinions were. And of course, you brought up Miss Gabbard here, who I think has just been ostracized by her
Oh
own
yeah, of
party.
course. You're right. They here it is the so-called party of peace and the environment, and everything it ostracizes a real soldier and statesperson who's been in the war zones who says no, and so they attack her for this. I mean, the irony here. No, of course she's never going to be nominated, let alone
Probably
elected
not.
by.
Yeah, not when you have Joe Biden and
Oh
Kamala
God.
Harris around. So
No, well, these people, they're all pandering lunatics, in my opinion. I mean, maybe lesser, greater. I remember I met Marianne Williamson in LA some years
I
ago.
like her. She seems kind of crazy, but I kind of like that about
Yeah.
her.
Well, she's got a funny cosmic worldview, and
Yes,
it's highly, new age religious thing. And
she's never going
I
to get
just want.
elected.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
She's
sorry.
never going to get elected.
No, no, and it's fun, it's been fun
Yeah,
seeing her up there. But Tulsi Gabbard is a sincere person. She's a person of true conviction. She took Kamala Harris apart and showed her to be just a roaring phony. I'm not political. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. Who would anybody in their right mind vote for from any of these people that are out there? But some people, it's fine. You feel passionate about something, do it. It's. I just think that we will never solve the problems that politics creates when the next person comes along saying, I'm the one to solve the problems that the last person came and made after he said he was going to solve the problems that his predecessor made. I mean, how stupid are we? Well, we know we have politics, and that makes people stupid. And religion, it sure doesn't help. That these are the two power giveaways that were put in place to keep people away from the spiritual teaching, where they learn that empowerment through their thinking. And they don't have to be dramatic in the world, but they start to navigate their own lives, interlinking with other people like-minded. They don't have to know, not everybody has to know about the Meier case, but they're good, like-minded people who understand, who come together. You're not trying to, do a big political thing. You want to learn the value of family and community and right action and right thinking, cause and effect. It is never talked about in politics. It certainly isn't talked about in religion, and that's why we're screwed. Because in religion, they think that some imaginary savior, some sky daddy, is going to solve everything and fix their own screwed up stuff. And they pray to deities who, if they're really omnipotent, knew about that tragedy that just befell 500 people or made it happen themselves, right? So we're going to pray after the fact to remind an imaginary deity to fix it. How stupid are we? And if people are offended by that, I have to say this. Every religion on the face of the earth is based on one inadmissible premise. You cannot bring this into a court of law nor a kindergarten. And here's the premise. What's in this book is true because this book says it's true. That's it. There's nothing else. You don't have evidence. You can't find a Jesus Christ historically anywhere, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as long as people want to stay primitive, they're going to take down the mass. We're with it. We're all going down together because of unreasonableness. But in the process, maybe, just maybe, we can become better people, live in a better way, contribute as best we can to our life and to our environment and to our neighbors, and just be darn good folks. Other than that, we're in trouble.
amazing. Now, Michael, I do want to thank you tremendously for being a part of the program. Always an honor and pleasure to have you here. We will definitely do it again, and hopefully this time a lot sooner than a whole year, Michael.
Anytime. And look, if you get questions, if you get stuff, and if you want, or anybody wants to email me, I answer all my email. It takes me a little while. I can answer emails. We can try to get some discussions going. We have people that are meeting about this all over the place, in America and Europe, that study this material if people are interested. But we're not going to knock on your door or anything
That's
like
true.
that to twist arm. So I thank you for this opportunity. It's been a delight because
Did you
I
have
felt
fun,
like I got a
Michael?
chance. I thank you for it very much, Michael. Truly.
Did you have fun, Michael?
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I'm thanking you, because I'm having I'm having fun, and I just hope that it's been of value to people who are listening and who will listen and watching all of that. And
It's been an absolute joy, Michael. Many of your listeners out there, many people that like Billy Meier or yourself, they will really like this. You were genuine, and people like that sort of thing.
well, my pleasure and my honor, actually. Anytime people will give us the opportunity to speak about this and have a say, and if you feel offended at all about the way I've spoken about UFO experts, etc., ask them for evidence. Prove it,
Ah,
prove that they. There it is. That's all.
love that.
Yeah. So anytime, and uh,
Fantastic.
people, I happen to notice, I just looked at your voice thing where somebody thinks, you want civil war, try to take away our guns. It's like, it's not that. One of the things, having guns, being armed, we have a film out called The Silent Revolution of Truth from 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever. And Billy Meier is showing his gun cabinet there with a Kalashnikov and a Bulldog revolver. And my buddy, the director, says to him in German, "Isn't that a bit aggressive?" And he says, "No." And then he explained, he says, look, everybody has a right to protect themselves, to protect their life and the life of others. The problem is you just can't use a weapon all the time. You have to have a situation that truly, truly warrants it. And even in Switzerland, where they have guns, everybody, all the men are taken in the military. They feel it's very, very important that people be qualified to have a gun. Look at all the lunatics that manage to get guns and are shooting people en masse. So if we can't have a dialogue and a way to say, how do we solve that without stealing people's guns? Because here's the last shoe I'll drop. In 2017, Meier published some predictions, and the predictions are that in coming times, in the government of the United States is going to turn the police and the military against the partly heavily armed citizenry as the global financial collapse proceeds. So you don't have some crazy left-wing people here. You've got people that think and they go with what the principles of life and reality are. Having said all that and taken all your time, I thank you and I invite comments from people. And please feel free to email, complain, ask questions, whatever.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll do this again soon, my friend. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Salve.
And there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That was the one and only Mr. Michael Horn. Great guy, great guest. Definitely have to bring him back on. And yes, I apologize for those out there who did leave a message in the chat room or a question. I didn't see that at the time. I was completely occupied back here. And looking at the time, it is that time to go on a little break. Maybe even a long break, who knows? This is a great time now for you to go to the restroom and maybe perhaps get some a snack or something to drink. Now is that time. And when I return, Robert Bruce makes his return. Or or do that too, Bobby. That's true. You can do that. Anything you'd like, any gimmick. Now is the time to use that gimmick. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the program. I'm sorry I took so long. I apologize, but I'm glad you're here and not somewhere else. Now, let's bring in the second guest. Mr. Robert Bruce, how are you, my friend? And did we lose Mr. Robert
No,
Bruce?
I'm
Oh,
good.
there he is. There he is. Oh, my goodness. I thought we might have lost you, sir.
No, I muted my mic
Smart man.
and forgot. Yeah.
You know how to do it, though. That's the proper thing to do.
Yep, it's click. Yeah.
You are a veteran, my friend. And of course, this is definitely not your first rodeo here on the program as well. And as we begin, my friend, I definitely want you to tell the listeners out there a little bit about yourself as we get the night rolling here. Oh, and that time, we might have lost him. Oh, yes. And that time we did. That time we actually did lose Mr. Robert Bruce. Insane. And that happens every now and then, folks. We do lose people every now and then. Let's give him a call back here. I know, right? Isn't that terrible? Yes. Now he's asking me what happened. Oh, Robert. Yes, it seems like we dropped out there. I know, right? Don't worry, folks. I'll get Robert back on. I'm explaining to him what the hell just happened there. Yes, calling him back now. My God. Yes, he's having some difficulty with his Skype account and all sorts of issues. That's why we were taking a little bit of time there, but don't worry. He's back. And let's give him a ring here. There he is. Robert, what happened there?
I don't know. We
We
seem to have got Skype disconnected.
got booted.
My computer connection's fine. Oh, hang on. Yeah, it's. Oh well. There's two versions of Skype.
Yeah.
One is like built. One's built into Windows.
Mm-hmm.
And when you called me this time, that's the one we're using now because it popped up when you called me.
Yes, that happens. And
Yeah.
Skype is just garbage, really.
There's some kind of conflict between the two programs, I think. I may have to uninstall one.
Yes, that's a good idea. Skype has been causing everyone that does a show or even just uses it regularly. It's been causing all sorts of issues. The update from Microsoft, it's been awful. They changed the whole thing, and it was fine before they even altered it. But that's what Microsoft does. They like to screw their own base.
Yeah, but keep in mind there's two versions. One is the one that's built into Windows,
Right.
which gets updated regularly. There's another version which is heavily updated, which is very slick. It's very good, much better than the built-in version. You can do split screen conversations and things like you used to be able to do with the old Skype.
Oh, yes. Terrible. So, Robert, let's pick up where we left off. And I was just telling you to introduce yourself to the listeners out there and tell them what got you into this field, Robert.
Wow, that's a big question, my friend. Yeah. I've been living and studying metaphysics, spirituality, starting from the age of 3. It's in my nature to observe and study. And I started having astral projections spontaneously at the age of 3. And I've been, where do I start?
It's very
I had,
difficult to. Yeah, I know. It's.
yeah, I've had a lot of experiences in my life, but I started very seriously, basically studying, not reading other books, but exploring it through myself and my own life. And in my 30s, I got heavily involved in some um, basically, this is in theme with the show tonight. I was very experienced as a healer and things like that, and but in my early 30s, I had people coming to me with entity-related problems, possessed children, little kiddies sometimes. I mean, it sounds hard to believe, but you only have to hear a 3-year-old girl speak in the voice of an adult man once, and you are completely convinced.
I'm
You know,
already. I'm already freaked out, Robert.
yeah, a cute little girl turns around and speaks in a deep male voice. And, you're talking about a child that can barely string a simple sentence together. And it's like, yeah, but by working with these cases, I had people coming out of the woodwork. At one stage, I was helping 6 families, and and I didn't know what to do, so I was just experimenting, trying this, trying that, doing research, trying to find something useful, and there was nothing really useful available. Nothing that you put it in a nutshell. Even books like Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune, which is about the closest you get to it. To do anything in that book, you need like years of training and practice. But anyway, this led me to my attempts to raise my Kundalini, and I succeeded, which of course burned away all my natural shielding. And a year later, after raising Kundalini, dozens of times I did it, I became demonically possessed while I was trying to help a 5-year-old child. And I didn't know, I wasn't doing an exorcism or anything. I was just giving healing and praying for the child. The mother was there observing. And at one point, in frustration, I thought in my mind, and I thought very clearly, I said, take me and leave the child. And it did, instantly. It was like getting punched in the face by a boxer. I literally was staggered. My lower lip swelled up like I'd been punched, and a big lump and some blood on the inside of the mouth. And I was paralyzed, and the only way I could describe it is tortured for like half an hour. But paralyzed, I was still sitting in my chair. Nobody noticed because I couldn't even blink. And then its grip of whatever it was left me, and I kind of fell to the floor. And I was like really scared because, I had no idea what was going on, and it was very powerful. And so I pulled myself together and kept smiling so I didn't scare anybody. And I felt okay. That was really, really scary. It's like having a near miss with a great white shark, which has also happened to me in my life. The fear level of that is right up there. When you or you could almost touch something like that, a shark or something. And over the next few days, I was worried about that, but I seemed okay. But about 4 or 5 days later, I'm sitting there talking to a friend, and sorry,
That's okay.
I'm sitting there talking to a friend, and my hand reached out, grabbed a can of beer, and threw it against the wall, like spontaneously. Now, this was not like a reflex action. It was a complex action, quickly grab and throw. Made a big mess. And but I'm holding my arm thinking, whoa, I didn't do that. My body did that, beyond outside of my control.
Right.
And that really, of course, worried me. And I'm thinking, it's a one-off. But the next day, I'm standing in the kitchen and my foot on its own leapt out and kicked my beloved blue boy, my black Labrador, and kicked him. And, poor Blue. But I mean, I really love that dog. But I didn't do that. And this sort of thing started happening, spontaneous partial losses of control, a hand, a leg, things like that. And this culminated after about a week, 10 days of this, on a rooftop car park in the city here. Now, we drove into town, my wife and I, and we had my baby James in the back, who was about 18 months old. And we parked on the rooftop car park in the city. And I got out, and as normal, and got my baby son out of his car seat in the back of the car. But as I stood up, holding him, this thing took complete control of me, 100%. And it was like the real me, my astral body, was pushed a few inches out of my body. I was slightly out of phase with my physical body. Now, given my experience with, I'd had thousands of astral projections up to this point, I realized what was happening. Now, my arms and legs were like freewheeling. I couldn't connect with my body. And this thing that had hold of me was like marching slowly, like you see, like a slow zombie walking towards the edge of the car park. And it was about 10, 11 floors up. And I could see what it was planning to do. It was going to throw my baby off the roof, and then I was going to do a swan dive after my son. And that was its plan. And it was like giggling and drooling as we went. Now, difficult to describe how I broke that before I got to the edge, but I basically put everything I had. It's like breaking waking paralysis when you wake up paralyzed. I put everything, all my efforts into moving one big toe. You could also use one index finger, but you focus everything you've got on moving that, and the index finger is particularly good, so is the big toe, because there's a lot of nerves going down there. And once you move that even a millimeter, boom, you have full control back. It's the same with breaking sleep paralysis, waking paralysis that you get when you have an astral projection. If you astral project and you are still awake and conscious in your physical body's paralyzed. And this way, if you focus on moving a big toe, you can, break that paralysis and start again. So, yeah, and that led me to basically, after that, I didn't trust myself, and I went home and I grabbed some stuff and I moved out to my mother's old house. She was away in England at the time for an extended holiday. And so I stayed there alone, and because I was terrified what was happening, and I was, of course, going to tackle this head on and try and find a solution. And it was nighttime and it was coming up for summer. It was early summer, but we had, which is normally very hot weather, but we had unseasonal storms coming in. So at the time, it's like 9 o'clock at night, and it was thundering and lightning and heavy rain and wind. And I was trying to connect to my higher self, anything higher than me that could give me some help or advice. And now I didn't have time to do this. I can't take years over this. I have to do it right now or I'm going to die. And I was trying to lucid my mind to open it And I'm searching for ideas and intuition here. And I got an idea come into my head. Now, I'm very, very good at clearing my mind with my history of meditation. So I said, right, I'm going to clear my mind. And the first thought that comes into my head that breaks through that, I will do. Whatever it is, I swear, I will do. Promise. And about 10 minutes later, I'm walking around the living room, holding my mind clear, and this thought popped into my head. And the thought was, I am going to go out into the storm and get a message to tell me what to do. And I feel like I'm going mad here. I'm being really loose and kind of goofy. But that's what I did. That's what came through. So I did. I just walked out, and I was just wearing slacks and a t-shirt, and walked out. And my mother's house was opposite some forest, so I just walked across the road and into the forest. And it's really dark and raining, and I'm navigating by lightning strikes. There's lots of lightning happening. And after about 10 minutes, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going into the forest. But after about 10 minutes, I'm getting hypothermic because of the wind chill, and I'm soaking wet. So I decided to jog a little bit to try and get some physical activity to warm me up. And I did that for a little bit, and then I misjudged something, and I ran headfirst into a tree, nearly knocked myself out, and bounced off the tree, rolled down a bit of an embankment into a ditch full of mud and rubbish. And when I clawed my way out of that through the mud, I'm like standing on the next to the tree again, holding my head, which was pouring blood. And I looked down in the flash of forked lightning, and I saw a scrap of newspaper, old, sort of rotting sort of newspaper, just a scrap of it, probably about, 6 inches, 8 inches square, stuck to my leg in the mud. And, part of me saying, the message. So I'm being really goofy here. So I grabbed that and carefully put it inside my T-shirt to protect it. And at the time, I'm analysing myself, are you just trying to get out of the cold because you want to get back into the warm again,
Right.
But I've got a message. I fulfilled the agreement.
Sure.
And went back to the house and, put the scrap of paper down on the draining board and dived into a hot shower because I was shivering and my teeth were chattering. And when I came out and I cleaned the paper up, the one side of the paper, there was nothing there. There must have been a big picture there. But the other side was a part of an advertisement from a local rag, just a local newspaper. And the only words I could make out were, come to Jarrahdale Garden Nursery, nestled in the hills of Jarrahdale, potted plants from 195. That was the message. And I'm thinking, well, I know where this is. It's about 60 miles from me in the deep bush. So I guess I'm going there because I'd sworn to do. I'm following this like a breadcrumb trail, like a paper chase here. And I had no other option. The only other options I had, which I'd been exploring, was one, I could kill myself, which was very attractive because that way I win by default because I've done this before I've harmed anybody. And because this thing is about to turn me into an ex-murderer.
And Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you seriously got to that point where you really did consider killing yourself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And I had a 12-gauge shotgun there, and I was nursing that and thinking a very attractive way out. But I had a bunch of little kids and, and a loving family, and it's like that would be my last option. Ooh. The only other option was to do what everybody was telling me, just observing me. Mate, you want to see a doctor? I would end up in a mental institution whacked up on some pretty heavy drugs.
Right.
And, probably for the rest of my life, or as long as this thing stayed with me, because it had control of me. And but the third option was the most difficult, the most intangible, and that was to do what I actually believed in, to actually walk the talk. And this is what I was doing by going out in the forest, getting the message. And the next day I went back home again, and I went to my shed and I got some rough clothing and packed a rucksack, no food, but I got a couple of 20-litre, 20-quart water bags and things like that. And I had this duffel bag with about, I don't know, probably 100 pounds worth of books and paper. I'm really overloaded. But I put that in the car, and I got my very, very, very worried wife to drive me. And and I'm like smiling and pretending to be confident because I don't want to terrify her or have her call the police because my husband's gone crazy. Can you please arrest him? I had to do this, and if my freedom was taken away, I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So we drove. It was like an hour and a half drive, and we got to Jarrahdale. The weather was hot at this time. It was like 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade, and we're driving through the hills. Now, I have no idea where I'm going. The last message I had was drive to the hills of Jarrahdale. And here I am, and there are these big hills on both sides of the road, and we're passing many hills. And she said, well, where do you want to go? I said, keep going, honey. I'll tell you when we get there. Keep smiling, pretend you know what you're doing. That's advice I give to a lot of people these days. Now, I don't know, so I'm like praying and smiling and acting confident, and I'm looking out at these beautiful hills, which are a couple of miles back from the road where they start, and then I saw it. There was a big flashing light coming right from the top of one of these hills, and it went flash, 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 and caught my attention. I thought, right, that's it. That's a sign, an omen. That's all I need. The way I'm going. Scrap a dirty newspaper, flash a light, that's good enough. So stopped the car, kissed my wife goodbye and told her I'd be back in about a week, and walked off into the scrub. Chest-high scrub, snakes everywhere.
And Robert, she just allowed you to do this.
What's she going to do about it?
Well, she didn't try to stop you. She just thought, okay, my husband, I'm just going to let him go. Am I understanding that correctly?
No. She was like arguing about it and that, So you should do this and you should do that. It's like, but I was trying to keep that at bay by acting confident, like I knew what I was doing. Now, we've been together for a number of years, and she knew me pretty well, and she knew a lot about, spiritual matters and that as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm playing the situation here to allow me to do this. Otherwise, she would be, rugby tackle me, but I'm twice her size, so I'm going to do what I'm going to do. If she hadn't driven me there, I would have found another way, even if I hitchhiked there or something. I couldn't really take my own car because, I'm going to go into the bush, and you can't leave it on the side of the road. Anyway, so I walk off and into thick scrub in the forest, and I'm literally, within a few minutes, I'm exhausted. I'm carrying an enormous amount of gear. I've probably got I'm probably carrying 150 pounds of gear, maybe more. I can barely walk with the load I've got, with all the water bags I've got and my rucksack and all the books and things like that, which I never even looked at, by the way, the entire time. And I struggled my way up this rock face, which was almost vertical. I'm clambering my way up, and I'm so exhausted, I'm literally tripping over tiger snakes. But fortunately, I've got heavy overalls on and a jacket and that, and any bites I got obviously didn't connect with my skin because I'm still here. Because you get bitten by a tiger snake, it's kind of all over. And I finally got to the top of this hill, and I, collapsed, like, gasping. My heart's beating at about 500 beats a minute from the exertion, and I'm sort of lying there panting. And when I could move again, I got up and I'm looking around for the source of the light. And I walked around a little bit because I took a beat on, roughly where it was on the top of this hill. It's quite a pronounced hill, hillock-like. And then I found it. I found the sacred Coca-Cola can. That's my name for it, because it was literally a empty Coca-Cola can, and somebody had put it down on top of a rock where there was a little hollow, and it was laying there, moving in the breeze, because it's very light. A little bit of wind and it would move, and that's what caused the flash of light, because the bottom and the top of the can, of course, shiny aluminum, which is like a mirror. And so this is step one. And to cut a long story short, it's quite a long story. I spent a couple of days on top of the hill, freezing at night, trying to get somewhere. I'm doing anything I can think of. I drew a huge circle on the rock using some string and chalk and a rock, and I'm drawing symbols, and I'm half expecting a spaceship to land and help. Anything. I mean, I'm doing anything I can think of.
Right.
Nothing's happening, but I am, getting hypothermic for most of the night because it gets very cold at night in the hills.
Yes, and by the way, Robert, I just wanted to interrupt you really quickly and say, for those that don't know, Robert is not American, if you haven't figured that out yet. He's not in America. Some people out there were asking me if you were here in America. They were asking me all sorts of random things, by the way.
I'm in Australia. I'm an Aussie Australian, and that explains the different accent. Yeah.
Right. Just needed to clear that up for them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did a lousy introduction at the beginning.
Don't worry, it's okay.
Quick segue here. I've written several books on this. On astral dynamics was my first book. It's all about astral projection, and I wrote a book called The Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook.
That's very popular.
Yeah, it helps a lot of people. I mean, you open it up, there's a quick start guide right in the front there as you open the book. It's like, because when you're under like an attack like this, you are generally, your mind is polluted, you can't focus on anything, and you're shivering, you've got pain, and you're a mess if you get a major attack. And, the quick start guide says the first thing to do, get in the shower. Now, nobody knows this. I discovered this years ago. By doing it, you can have the most major attack, a demonic attack, happening to you. And if you get in the shower, it stops instantly. It just stops. If you get out of the shower, it will start up again. You get back in the shower, it stops again. So the instruction is get in the shower, have a think about your situation, and you need to leave the house. Do not stay in a house or a place where you're getting attacked, because these entities don't travel well. It's almost like they move at a slow walking speed. So if you quickly get out of your house and go to a motel or family or friends or something like that, somewhere away, you're going to get some peace. It's going to leave you alone at least for a few hours, depending on how far you go, of course. If you hop on a jet and go across the country, you might get a few weeks break. Anyway, so that's one of the major countermeasures, and it's nothing you could say spiritual about this. It all comes down to electrical earthing. You are grounded, strongly electrically grounded to the planet when you're under a shower, because the water in the pipes is heavily electrically earthed all the way back to, the pipes go underground, back to the dam where it comes from. And that electrical source is very, very protective. And negative entities, negative inorganic beings, as I call them, or negs for short, That's anything that hurts human beings. They are basically two-dimensional beings bound to the surface of the Earth. There is an energy field on the surface of the Earth covering the entire planet, over the surface of the ocean, the land, up every tree, up the walls, inside and out. It even flows over your body because we walk upon the Earth. And this energy field is scientifically known about. It's created by lightning strikes, of which there are several thousand lightning strikes per minute around the globe. And this, when a lightning bolt hits the planet, apart from causing some localized damage, trillions of volts of electricity spread out instantaneously over the surface of the Earth. So this continual barrage of electricity that's been happening for many billions of years on this planet since it was formed has become like another dimension. And in this dimension, you find earth element beings, any negative being that is interested in human beings. 99.99% of the problem are earth element, earth bound type spirits, you could call them. And they are bound to the surface of the Earth. Now, if you bring one of these entities, you're talking about something that is like an electromagnetic program. It's like a discrete bit of electromagnetic force. If you bring that into contact with a strong electrical earth into the planet, you force it into the planet and it demanifests it. And what it does then, if you can force that, and there are ways of tricking entities into a situation like that, you force them into the planet, they go through the planet and up out through one of the poles into the stratosphere, where there is a corresponding level of layer of energy in the stratosphere as the one on the surface of the Earth. If you look at how the Earth works as like a huge electric generator, has lots of electrical field activity and things. And once an entity is demanifested and up in the stratosphere, the only way it can get back to the land again is to write the lightning down, which gives new meaning to the whole idea of a fallen angel, because it has to literally write a lightning bolt down to come back here again. And most of the not too smart ones don't know this. It's only usually the more intelligent ones that have worked this out. And even then, it's very difficult for them, I should imagine, to come back down accurately. I mean, first thing you need is a thunderstorm, and one of these things may end up across the country or in another country somewhere. So it makes it difficult for them. But this is not theoretical.
Yes.
I have done field exercises with this in real life situations with myself and many of the people, including my own children and family, that I've helped with these sorts of things. And you have to see it to believe it. I've had babies like as young as 9 months of age brought to me, and they are red and screaming and haven't slept, and neither has the mother. And I take this baby and I go into my backyard, and I've got a garden hose laying there, and I turn the water on, and I walk up to the water where it's gushing out of the hose, and I hold the baby that's rigid and screaming by the shoulders, and I walk through the running water, and I just touch the baby's toes in the water as we cross it. The instant the baby's toes touch that water, it goes limp, and it's goo goo gaga. It's like a happy little baby waking up, like it's just been asleep. Now, if I take one step back over that water again, it's scream rigid. So you literally, if you go backward and forward, you've got goo goo gaga, scream, goo goo gaga, scream. It's absolutely specific. There's no question about it that you've broken something away. You can't see it or feel it, but something on the other side of that hose, like an invisible bulldog, is waiting there to bite the baby whenever you go across. But there's a lot to this if you study it. It's like you've got a garden hose going to the house where the tap is, right? Obviously, there's something about the running water, even inside the hose, that the entity can't cross. But where you've crossed through there, you've got water gushing out probably for about half a yard into the grass. And so this thing has only got to move like 2 yards to the right, and it can easily go around and get at you. So the question is, why is it waiting there, and why doesn't it just go around? Why doesn't it fly over the running water? Obviously, because it can't fly. This thing is very determined, very nasty. And the only reasoning of why it doesn't go around when it's only got to go a few feet to the side, it's like obviously its perception is very, very different. It seems to be very, very linear. It can see what it wants in front of it. Now, the running water, and I've discussed this with a number of physicists over the years, and they said, basically, he said, you've got some kind of, you could describe it as like a huge potential well, like the Grand Canyon is sitting in front of this entity, and it comes up to that, and it won't go forward because that would demanifest it like into the Grand Canyon. So it stops there. And because it's perceiving you with different senses, these things don't have eyes like we do. It's perceiving you, it's like using radar or sonar or something like that. It knows
that's very creepy.
It knows where you are, but it can't see you per se. But you do this enough times, it becomes reliable. And then over the years, I've developed different countermeasures, even using electrically earthed bed sheets and things like that, and pillows, grounding pads, and various ways to apply electrical earthing to deter negative negs.
By the way, Robert, I do have a question about this, about being under psychic attack, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, let's say if I'm under psychic attack and it seems to be coming from somebody, let's say I know, but perhaps they aren't consciously aware that they're doing it. Is that possible?
That is usually the case. It is, you get a person that has a negative entity attached to them that may have been there from childhood. I mean, a lot of these things are hereditary. They come down through family lines, from mother to child, from father to child. These things may have been attached to your family for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Shadow aspect, yes.
Sorry?
I was just saying a shadow aspect, as they say.
Oh, right, yes. So in a case like that, if you have like an altercation with the host, the person that the entity is attached to, it may be a little thing, a little slight, a little disagreement of some kind. And well, it's even worse if you are like lovers. If you're in a relationship, you're having a problem with, because you have a much stronger connection to somebody you're having a relationship with. I mean, like husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend type relationship. Now, there's kind of an unwritten agreement, and this is through observation. When a negative entity of any kind is attached to a human being, there is like an unwritten agreement. Whereas if this entity will attack your enemies, it will like defend you from your enemies. It's part of the agreement. That's one possibility. It may play a part, at least with different types of entities. There's a lot of different types.
Right.
The other is that these are opportunists. So when you get a slight argument or disagreement or something there, and the person, the host of the entity, is like focusing on the other person and maybe, angry, it's pumping a bit of energy in that direction, the entity just uses that opportunity to attack the other person that's being focused upon. And that starts up a psychic attack. The entity does what it's, you could say, habitually does.
Yes.
Depending on its level of ability and intelligence, of course, and there's a huge variety. Some are very simple, and most common or garden variety negs use a very similar approach. There's usually some kind of a disturbing event often nightmares and things like that. You'll get symptoms like cold, shivers, pains. You will get moles appear on your body, new ones.
New
And
moles, okay.
this thing will make some kind of attachment. It's like plugging a couple of little leads into you. And then during sleep, it infiltrates your dream state, and focusing on any natural traumas you may have had in the past, trauma memories, it will latch onto a trauma memory, which is, and it puts like a plug into your skin, and wherever it plugs into your skin, it will create a mole. A mole just appears in the area where the attachment point is. And this is demonstrable later, because if you remove that mole using a blue ballpoint pen, just basically drawing on it, there's something in the ink, of blue ballpoint ink, which is damaging to the attachments, which are represented by moles. You have to see this to believe it, my friend.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
The average time, if you just draw a circle and an X over a mole, and you top that up every time you shower, you will find the average time for that to die and flake off is 2 weeks, 14 days. It will come off as rapidly as 48 hours. It will literally dry up and peel off like a little scab. 48 hours to 2 weeks. Sometimes they take longer. Some will take months, but they usually respond pretty quickly. And once you do that, when the mole dies, the attachment dies, and the entity then has to try and make another attachment. And you might find a new mole will start growing close to the one you've just gotten rid of, which will, by the way, will literally dry up, or you can peel it off and it will heal to a white spot, which over a period of months will tan and leave no scar.
And Robert, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So, I mean, just on a cosmetic basis alone, this is, I mean, a lot of negs that cause moles and skin blemishes, like similar skin blemishes like that, are really innocuous. It's like a little jellyfish attached to your skin. It's not doing anything. It may be feeding off a little bit of your life force or energy, but it's so small that you would never notice it. So on a cosmetic basis, being able to remove moles,
yes,
and that is not just flat moles, including the types, the raised moles with the big hairs coming out of them.
Ooh.
That sort of mole responds as well. Yeah.
The visual's in my head.
Yeah. And a lot of other types of skin blemishes and skin tumors and things like that will respond to a blue ballpoint pen, just a circle and an X.
I'm going to have to try that now.
Originally, I thought it was due to being like a sacred symbol of some kind. And I've tried them all over the years. You're putting crosses and, pentagrams and, hexagrams and all kinds of things there. But there's no difference between any of those symbols, no matter how neat you draw them, and just a squiggle. It doesn't make any difference. You could literally just color it in. The blue ballpoint ink and a lot of the darker inks, they have like iron salts in the ink to make the color. And I think there's two things could be happening here. One is it like literally causes a barrier, blocks the flow of energy over your skin. There's a lot of energy flowing over the skin, and it either blocks that from getting to the mole, so the attachment point dies because it's not getting energy, or the ink is accumulating it, causing an accumulation of energy which burns it away. One or the other. It's very, very difficult to ascertain which one is at work here. There may even be something else at work we haven't even thought of. So, but once they have some simple hooks into you, some attachments, which it may not be able to do very much with at all, during sleep, it will then generate, by invading your dream state, it will give you a series of dream traumas, traumatic events, like nightmare things happening in dreams, that you may not even remember because, if you wake up and don't remember your dreams, you've completely missed it. But what it does by creating these little traumas, it creates a network of trauma memories in your psyche. And it uses this network of trauma memories like a spider web spinning out from the middle. It uses that to infiltrate your chakra system of your human energy body, infiltrates your chakras and your mind. Now, over a period of time, depending on the strength and experience of the entity involved, which can be anything from, minutes to, years, with the average one taking, months to do something like this, many months on average. Eventually it gets to a point there where it has more and more control. Now, as in my case, you have a highly experienced neg like a demon, which is,
Yes.
and they have, like, consciousness-wise, they are like an order of magnitude above human beings. So they're much more, you could say, much stronger consciousness. That thing did that to me very quickly, made the initial attachment, which was in my lower lip. And that lump, by the way, turned into a gristly lump under the skin, about the size of a peanut.
Wow.
Now, that is technically called, if you research it, is called stigmata diabolis, which is also called the devil's mark. And that was the primary evidence searched for during the witch hunts all over the world. They were looking for a hard, gristly lump that when you pierced it with a needle, it neither bled nor hurt, because a gristly lump has no nerve endings in it, so you can, and no real blood flow. And so that was why during the witch hunts, when you examined, in order to indict you as a witch, they gave you a very thorough physical search, searching every inch of your skin inside and out, inside your mouth and orifices everywhere. Now, if they found a gristly lump under your skin somewhere, that's it. That is like absolute proof that you did it. It's like an eyewitness. But if they didn't find this, the records show they didn't find the lump, then they say, well, this person is obviously not a witch. Therefore, the accuser is arrested and charged with false accusation. And the accused witch there is let go and compensated for their trouble. Now, this is in the records because during the witch hunts, they kept accurate records of the witch trials and things like that, which you can hunt down if you want to see for yourself. This, what I'm telling you about now, is not the sort of stuff they taught in schools. The stuff you hear about in schools, in history lessons about the witch hunts,
Right.
It comes down to, it was all like about crazy people, property grabbing, hurting people. But I have to say, they actually knew what they were doing at the start. Now, I'm sure human beings, being what they are, this eventually devolved down into what history believes. That, all these poor old women, were accused of being witches when they were just herbalists and that.
Right.
All of that is true. I'm not saying any of that. But I'm getting back down to the roots of what actually caused that situation to occur. And it was because the church perceived there was an outbreak of witch demons infiltrating the world. That's what I call them. And they were trying to do something about it. And the only thing they did know, they knew that there was a relationship between a gristly tumor under the skin and a demon. Now, if you look at my situation, I got like a swelling in the mouth, like I was hit. Now, later, when I actually broke the attachment and I was literally sleeping on top of an underground stream of running water, yada, yada, yada.
Interesting.
The instant I broke it, which was just on dawn, and like I'm walking down to my little pond to a little spring to get some water, and this huge weight of tension and that, I felt it lift off of me. It's like I had this big backpack taken off of me. Now, as that lifted off of me, like within 1 second, there's an explosion in my lower lip. That gristly lump, the size of a peanut, exploded into my mouth into 100 pieces, and I'm spitting out bits of gristle and blood, and I've got a big hole in my lower lip. I've still got the scar there. Now, in my experience, and of course, many years of working with hundreds of people with similar situations there, that's consistent. The original witch hunters were right about that aspect. If you get this like gristly lump thing there, it's likely to be a reasonably important type of attachment. You may have one of these and there's nothing happening. It may be an innocuous type that causes a similar sort of a gristly lump, but it can also be basically a possession attachment, an attachment through which, if the neg is smart enough and strong enough, it can use that to not just influence you, but also even possess you.
I see.
And take control of you.
Right. And by the way, Robert, someone earlier in the chat room by the name of Brooke ask him why someone might be seeing a ghost-like thing when they wake up, but it's not sleep paralysis, like sitting on their bed, even when the person goes on vacation. And that comes from Brooke.
There's two possibilities here. Now, when you wake up in the morning and you think you're awake, you could be, because it's possible to have an astral projection when your physical body is paralyzed when you fall asleep. Let me rephrase this. Everybody astral project whenever they sleep. All living things do. Animals, cats, dogs, everything astral projects whenever they sleep. It's a part of it's a natural phenomenon common to all life forms. Now, every living thing also dreams. I mean, we have evidence that cats and dogs and things like that dream. You can see that happening.
Right.
So, but when you have an astral projection, your mind can remain awake, your astral double can be out and functioning in the astral. It may be in the same room as you. Your dream mind can also be active at the same time. That's 1, 2, 3 of you operating simultaneously, a multiple of 3. Causes a lot of complexities. You should read my book, Astral Dynamics, where I go into what I call the mind split effect and how this works and how it causes problems. Now, very often, the case you're talking about there, a person wakes up. Now, they still have an astral projection in progress, but they wake up in such a way that they are basically inhabiting, you could say, like the etheric body inside of themselves, which is like the in-between subtle body between the physical body and your spiritual bodies. There's one that stays inside the physical body. I call it the etheric body. And you can wake up in that and you won't notice that you're paralyzed because you think you can move. Now, you can roll over and go to sleep, but you don't physically move. You could say your etheric body rolls over and goes to sleep. But in that particular state, which is quite common, you have astral sight, which means you can see into the astral dimension around you, even if your eyelids are closed or your physical body is rolled over under the quilts facing the other way. You can see the room around you. And if you see somebody sitting on your bed or walking past your bed, if you look closely, you will find they look remarkably like yourself. And this is, you are seeing your own astral double, your own astral doppelganger, you could say. It is you functioning in the astral. And this often scares a lot of people because they say, oh, I've got my evil astral, my evil doppelganger was there in the room and I don't know what's happening. It's just a simple phenomenon. You're just misinterpreting the phenomena, which is something really innocuous happening. Now, it could be possible also that there is a spirit in the locale that you're at, which is sitting on your bed. It is just some spirit. It might be an ex-human, a deceased person, somebody's died there recently, or a classic ghost that is just sitting there, somebody that died in that house maybe or lived there and hasn't moved on. You could be seeing something like that. One or the above, but the most likely scenario, the most common one I come across, is that it is because when you just wake up in the morning, this is likely to be your own astral double, which is you sitting on your own bed.
Incredible. I hope that answered her question.
It's a very common mistake to make because this is not common knowledge. I mean, I have spent my entire life studying these things by doing it, like astral projecting over and over and over again, and
Yes.
just studying the exit out of body, studying the symptoms, the chakras that are involved, and, you know, interactions between my astral body and my physical body mind on the bed, you know. And, you know, I've spent like decades doing this. Because it's the only way you can make any headway is to actually do it repeatedly and observe.
Very, very interesting. And of course, Robert, I wanted to get slightly personal with you. And I don't mean to be too intrusive here, but in terms of your wife, she is totally in tune with what you are doing today. No issues with anything. Either one of you is not having any sort of issues in terms of maybe having trouble sleeping at night. No one is having any of those sort of issues currently right now, correct?
No, not right now. It does happen occasionally. But obviously,
Interesting.
my wife understands my work and she's had a lot of experiences herself. And I mean, she does a mean pentagram banishment, just like I do.
Yeah, you know,
I've taught pentagram
go ahead.
banishment is very effective. I've taught that to 5-year-olds effectively.
Yes. Yeah, the whole banishment ritual, definitely tell the listeners a little bit more about that, especially since you can use like a pentagram.
The pentagram, I find, is the most effective. Now, in this field, you are told like hundreds of different things that were supposed to work. You know, I have tried over the years when I first got into this, I've tried all the religious advice. Being careful what I say here so I don't upset anybody. But all the religious advice that you do and things like that, the different prayers and psalms and things like that, and none of it worked. It almost got me killed a bunch of times. But then I discovered the pentagram. Now I can't explain how it works or even why, but it works. And in my world, when you're like out there in the field, what works.
Yes,
So
it's interesting.
I continue to use it because it's effective. And literally, if an entity manifests around you or something weird happens, if you sign it, as I said, I've taught this to 5-year-olds, and some children have really big problems, nocturnal problems, the monster under the bed type thing happening, but it's often real negative entities tormenting the children. And you literally sign it from your left hip, up to above your head, down to the right, up and across to the left shoulder, across to the right and back down to your left hip. And as you sign that, you imagine you are like drawing it in like blue ink or violet ink, and it's hanging there in front of you. Just imagine it. And as you do that, you say the words, very simple. Say, I banish you in the name of Tetragrammaton. That's how I teach it to children. Tetragrammaton. A child can remember that and say that. Now, of course, an adult, you add a commanding tone and you say, I banish you in the name of Tetragrammaton. And that is one of the primary God names.
Interesting.
It's much more powerful than the other Hebrew God names. Now, I've tried them all. There's a lot of them, the names, a selection of them. Each of the Hebrew God names for the God indicate a different aspect of God. For example, the God name Shaddai. Now, Shad means breast. So this is referring to the female aspect of God, Shaddai. So you can say all of the God names when you've memorized them, when you've got a card there. Or the alternative to it, the Tetragrammaton literally translates as the four-letter word. That's what it means in the translation. But this is referring directly to the primary God name. It says the four-letter word. It's referring to the nearest we have to the primary God name is Yud Have Vav Hair. It's pronounced in different ways, but the true pronunciation of that word is a closely guarded secret. There's probably only a handful of people know it in reality. But of course, if you're not saying it right, it's nowhere near as effective as it should be. But if you say tetragrammaton, you're pointing to the primary God name. This is the equivalent of, Michael, you have a father,
Right.
and your father has a name. Say his name is also Michael, right?
Right.
Now, but if you say to people, oh, Dad, my dad did that, my father did that, everybody knows exactly who you're talking to. You know, the information is pointing directly at this person. Or my brother, if you've only got one brother, my sister, my auntie, whatever, my wife. You've only got one wife, hopefully. And everybody knows you're talking about your wife. So this is how it works. Tetragrammaton points obscurely or directly, I should say, to the primary God name, which is a very, very powerful thing. And I find that is the most powerful banishment word of all, because it is less tainted. You can't get it wrong, so it works. And even little children can do this. 5-year-olds, even a couple of 4-year-olds I've taught this to as a way of, dealing with their nocturnal night terrors and nightmare type issues and things like that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that these just children would get some sort of attachment. Oh.
Well, Michael, I've seen babies as young as 9 months of age which are under full-on demonic possession attacks. I mean, what happens to these things is they attack a child and terrify the child until the child bellies up, and then they spend time making a solid attachment in that child. And once the attachment's made, and this process takes usually 3 or 4 weeks, and then the entity backs off, and it might come back 15, 20 years later when the child is grown up and is, more suitable to the entity involved. Whereas some entities will just hang around every day, slowly learning how to control the child and messing with the child's psychology and personality. And these things could even mess with a person's sexuality, twist you.
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to ask you earlier, what about those famous people that have been scrutinized for some of their side behavior throughout the years? People like, like Jeffrey Epstein, like Michael Jackson, other people of that cloth. Do you think perhaps they faced some sort of entity attachment?
I really don't know, Michael. I'd have to look. I'd have to actually investigate the case. You look at the person involved. I don't know. It's possible, but I really don't know.
It's possible.
You definitely could not use this in a court of law.
Of course not. Yes.
If your body did something, then you did it, even if you had no control over why you were doing it. And you can't really use this as an excuse. It's just beyond human ken.
Harvey Weinstein was possessed.
Yeah.
You never know.
Possible.
You never know.
I've come across a number of pedophile types in my life that have had possession problems. It is very clear.
Yeah, that is wild stuff. And by the way, Boss Man in the chat room had originally said, tell him if one accepts Jesus Christ into their heart, it's impossible for a demon to occupy one's body.
Well, that is debatable in the extreme. When it comes down to personal experience, I've helped quite a lot of people who've been devout Christians and that in my life with, these sorts of problems. And you think about it, humanity knows about 1% of what's going on here. And we're not necessarily talking about the devil or demons or whatever there. We're talking about negative inorganic beings.
Right.
You know, these are things, including wildlife and stuff, things which evolved on this planet that we can't see. You know, there's a huge range of, there's as many different types of spirits out there as there are different species of animals and insects and fish and that. You know, it is a huge number of them. And I mean, that is a good thing to believe in, but as I say, it's debatable because it does happen.
Understood. And of course, almost anything is debatable. So I can agree with you on that.
I tried this myself many years ago. I was desperate, you know, and I've tried this. I've literally had charismatic preachers literally beating me over the head with a Bible and passion, and all these, you know, their passionate followers standing around me, anointed with oil and splashed with holy water, and, you know, and nothing worked. It's like, now, theoretically, according to your beliefs, it should work, but it doesn't work in practice. It doesn't work.
Understood. And earlier you reminded me about the Salem witch trials, even though you didn't exactly refer to it, but that's what I was thinking of the entire time. And now I have that stuck in my mind.
We had the witch hunts in America, and you also had them in Europe.
Right.
And great many similarities between them. The church is a church. And as I said, I'm sure it did devolve into like a money-grabbing power thing. And I mean, some towns and cities in Europe were completely wiped out by this because they like hung everybody, you know, men, women, children, because they thought they were seeing witches everywhere. And I'm sure a lot of human insanity got involved in that. But originally, if you look at the Witch Hunter's Handbook and where it came from, they were valid in what they were looking for. And also, you have to look at how the history of those events is kind of twisted. Now, you think that if it was proven that you're a witch, that you're going to be tortured and burned at the stake, but not necessarily. There were such things as penitent witches. Now, if you admit that you're a witch and say, look, I'm a witch, yeah, I admit that, and I'm sorry, what happened then, if you were genuinely sorry, you would be released into the care of a priest, and he would work with you. And over a period of time, you've got to attend Mass like every day, and over a period of time, he would turn you back to the church until that priest was satisfied that you're now a Christian again, you're no longer evil. Things like that are going on which don't quite fit common, you know, popular history.
Understood. Yes, I could definitely understand your point of view and where you are coming from. And by the way, before I bring up someone in the chat room that's in there right now who claims that you have helped them remove some sort of entity or demon, rather, I just wanted to quickly ask you about Catholicism. What's your current thoughts and opinions on Catholicism and what's been going on with those folks there?
I don't really have an opinion about the religion, or any religion per se, but I know the Catholics are more active than probably any other church when it comes down to formal exorcisms,
right,
and things like that. They have a very florid history of being involved in this. But exorcism, of course, is not like what you see it is in the movies, you know, where the priest does some rituals and the entity's banished. I mean, it's usually a lot more difficult than that. And some exorcisms can take many years.
Understood.
Of repeatedly doing things. And I've heard of some people that have been exorcised that can never leave the Vatican again, ever. They have to live there.
Very interesting. And in terms of holy water, have you ever used that yourself?
Yeah, it can be effective. It's ritualized magic. You have holy water and holy salt. And that a lot of entities are, you could say, repulsed by that, but not all of them. say there's a lot of different types out there. You're not just dealing with one. And when it comes down to my countermeasures, which I call them, they're practical countermeasures, because, I mean, this has nothing to do with religion. You have a spiritual problem, you have a demonic attack or something like that going on, or a possession, and you get in the shower, or you use electrically earthed bed sheets. You use frankincense, incense, which is good for cleansing atmospheres, and various techniques like this, very practical stuff that anybody can use. And if you can't afford the electrically earthed bed sheets, which are a godsend, if you're in a situation like that, get onto YouTube and you'll find instructions there for making your own using some aluminum-backed duct tape and some alligator clips and things like that. Very, very easy to make stuff up yourself if you can't afford, because they want, I know, a couple of $100 for a bed sheet, and earthing pads and things like that. But you can make your own.
Very interesting. Now, someone in the chat room by the name of Michelle M is claiming that they were attacked bad by a demon in a hospital back in 2013, and you are helping them get rid of it. Do you recall any of that?
Hi, Michelle.
Okay, you do know.
Yeah, this is an active case, ongoing active case at the moment.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And this is, well, the beauty of this case, let's say the beauty of it is, from my perspective as a scientist, you could say, is usually when I'm working with somebody and trying to help them, I look at what do I have to work with? How much compliance am I going to get from this person in applying the countermeasures? Because you have long arguments about people can't work out how's a shower going to help me? How's electrically earthed bed sheets going to help me? And this and that. Why should I burn frankincense? It gives me a headache, All of that. Whereas Michelle, I've got 100% compliance to work with, because she's really into this. And, as we've been working on this, and we've been working on this for like a month or so now, it's absolutely working. I mean, removing moles, every day moles are falling off and new ones are appearing. So we're marking them and doing this and doing that. And it's like we're making really good progress. And anybody can do this if they are very proactive. Throw your beliefs out the window for a while and just focus on the practical countermeasures. These are things which we know work. And if you consistently apply them, you will eventually, whatever it is that's attached to you, you will break those attachment cords. These are like energetic cords going into your body, and eventually, if you erode those away, they eventually detach, and the entity is like blown away in the wind. And there you are. You're now free of it.
Very interesting. And of course, we are coming to a close very shortly here. We only got about 10 more minutes left here, Robert, before we have to descend here, sadly. And I've been enjoying this conversation. I've been having lots of fun learning new things from you all the time, Robert.
Oh, you're most welcome, mate. I love this is like one of my favorite subjects. This favorite subject, it's because it is just so interesting.
Very.
And as I said, humanity knows less than 1% about what's going on here. I probably know 10% of what's going on, but that still leaves 90% of this interaction with negative beings and spirits that we do not understand. And I think humanity needs to, and the only way you're going to do it is to experiment with it.
Yes.
When opportunities arise. There's very little of any use you can learn out of any book in the planet. It's just because of the problem that fear is a big problem. People are too afraid to investigate this sort of thing or do anything. But even, some people, you can't even talk about it. I frequently get letters from people who bought my book, they've got a problem, they say, what do I do? I'm too afraid to read it. And I usually tell people to go outside in the sunshine and find a nice spot and read it outside in the sunshine. It's much less intimidating. But I mean, I downplay the book as much as possible. Instead, I call it using scary names like demon and that, I call them all negs, negative inorganic beings. That anything that causes human beings problems is a neg. And my countermeasures are very, very practical. It's things that anybody can do immediately, like jump in the shower, burn some frankincense or dragon's blood or different types of incense, which are known to be effective. And, put some magnets, get some rare earth magnets and tape those to your body. If you've got a pain in the area or you've got a mole, an attachment point where you're pretty sure it is, put some magnets around there and see what happens. Put some tiger balm on your feet, because the feet are very important, Michael, because
yes.
we walk upon the earth with our feet. Now, these entities exist in a dimension which is an electrical dimension over the surface of the earth, and that's what we walk upon. So any attack on us or any infiltration always comes through the feet, no exception. They come through the feet. You may perceive like interference or a pain in your left shoulder, but like a millisecond beforehand, there's something comes through your feet. So obviously, if you protect your feet, you can put magnetic inserts in your shoes. You can put a little bit of tiger balm on your feet, which is a strong aromatic type menthol type ointment they use for sports injuries and that. Very effective at deterring negative entities. You can put some of them on at night time before bed, and that alone will greatly reduce your vulnerability to these things, but also if you have a problem, it will weaken the problem.
Very interesting. And before we run out of time here, I did want to switch gears very, very slightly here. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts and opinions about synchronicity.
Synchronicity, coincidences, things like that.
Right.
I think that relates to your higher self. Now, when I say your higher self, I'm talking about a much higher aspect of you, which for all intents and purposes is God, or whatever else you want to call it. It is also, you could fairly call this your spirit guide. It doesn't care what you call it, but often this great aspect of you, this divine aspect of you, will manipulate things around you, and coincidences, synchronicities, and things like that will appear as a way, you could say, of catching your attention. Because in my experience, this divine aspect of you is trying to communicate with you all the time, particularly if you have, problems, spiritual problems here. It's like talking to you constantly, but we don't know how to listen. Now, I've learned over the years to follow signs and omens and synchronicities and coincidences and things. If something happens, a bit of a coincidence, it gets my attention and I observe it. If something else happens relating to that again, the third time's the charm there. Boom, I'm all over it, trying to explore from that. Literally, if a piece of paper blows up my driveway and, catches my attention, I look at it. And if, some time later there, I see it moving again.
Yes.
Outside my window. Now I'm watching it. Now, if the third time, if the wind catches it and it blows up against my window, and then I go out into the yard and I pick up that piece of paper, just like that rotting piece of newspaper that saved my life. And, this is very important. And then I take it home and I see what words are on there, what symbols, pictures, whatever is on there that might give me a clue as to, what I've got here. I'm given some advice or I'm given an answer to something, some information which could help the situation. It's very shamanic, my approach to the universe.
Yeah, lots of synchronicities do occur in my life all the time. It almost seems like the universe clearly likes to throw these signs at me, either through television or either something that happens, and even at times deja vu, which is something else I wanted to ask you about. Do you experience that yourself? Robert?
I have done many times, yes.
Weird,
I
right?
think I think it has to do with you could say, the multidimensional nature of the universe. I mean, the universe is vastly more complex than we could even imagine. And also, like multiple realities, there seem to be an almost infinite range of multiple realities, which means, Michael, there's like, it could be an almost infinite number of you in different realities. And I think there's an interaction between these different, here and now, and these other realities. And I think that is somehow the cause of deja vu. Maybe it's something that you've done before in another reality, and for good or for worse. And in this reality, when you see this particular thing happening, like it's a cat walking across you, or you see some particular thing happening, you notice it and it reminds you of something. You can't really remember where it came from, maybe a dream or something like that, but it gets your attention. Or along with this getting your attention, you may get a strong feeling to turn right, or to turn back, or to stop the car or something. And I have a lot of people reported that to me. Something like this happens and they stop the car, and then, not very far in front of them, this truck comes around the bend sideways. And if they hadn't have stopped right then and there, they would have been killed. That sort of thing happens, giving us really beneficial warnings.
Very interesting. Well, Robert, I hate to do this, but I do have to close up shop here, and I do want to thank you tremendously for being a part of the program. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure, and I had such a fun time with you, Robert.
Well, thanks, Matty. And if anybody wants to find out any more about my work and my books, go to astraldynamics.com.
Very nice, yes. And Robert, before I let you go, any final words of advice or encouragement for any of the truth seekers and mystics out there who will listen to this at a later time?
I absolutely recommend you read I have 3 books which form the core of my body of work. And that is Astrodynamics, the Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook, and my book Energy Work. Now, these books, particularly the Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook, should be taught in primary schools, because the techniques and that in there are very, very simple, very practical. And this is like essential knowledge for being a human being. You need to understand about the astral dimension, astral projection, dreaming, how it all works together. And this all forms a body of work, which everybody really needs to know.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Robert, and I'll talk to you on the other side, my friend.
My pleasure. Bye.
Mahalo. And there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That was the one and only Mr. Robert Bruce. And of course, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me this evening here and listening to those great 2 souls that graced our presence here this evening. That was the one and only Mr. Michael Horn earlier, and the voice you heard a moment ago, that was Mr. Robert Bruce, a fantastic man and guest. Loved hearing his stories, and of course, Michael Horn was on fire this evening. He was not holding back whatsoever, and I appreciate that. He likes to get in the pocket there and stir it up, just like I do. Good times. And of course, as we take it home here tonight, I'd like to thank all of you in the chat room, and of course, all of those who will listen to this tomorrow evening. Hello from the future. Much respect to all of you. And of course, you can add me on Twitter at Michael Deacon. And of course, if you want more bonus content of the program, please go to patreon.com/Michael Deacon. And you will find the Patreon page and some bonus additional content just for you. International listeners out there, thank you so much for your support. Stay safe, everyone, no matter where you are on this island Earth. Definitely be safe, no matter where you are out there, folks. Oh, yes. And of course, I also want to remind you before I sign off, I almost forgot here. I almost forgot this one here. If you do sign up for the Patreon, you will be able to listen to the interview with Mr. Stephen Bassett coming up, and that's this Thursday. It's going to be pretty fun. I'm going to have a good time showing him some of the, well, making him hear some of the audio from what Michael Horn said earlier. This should be very interesting. I think they might even come to blows one day. Who knows, folks? Who really knows? Stay tuned for that.
To sit, goddamn attitude to fit. Talk gives me where to spit. Things have changed and I have quit. Got nothing to look forward to but backlash full of lies. You're too late where you're going. This is fate. The whistle's blown. It's much too late. It's too late. You're much too late. Like this whole punk with his nose turned up and a fragrance all your own. Tell me what it's like to be alone. And let's not forget the Scarface break. Cool off his fixed